My name's Joe. Every morning I clean Sydney Road and some of the surrounding streets. I often work with our crew, who are a great bunch. They're hard-working but also up for a laugh, and part of what makes me get out of bed each day. It's really quiet first thing, but there's always a lot to clean. Sometimes it's a bit of a mess and there's rubbish scattered around. I clean the footpath, the street furniture, the bins and remove graffiti off public buildings. I like it. It keeps me busy. It feels pretty satisfying to know that at the end of each day I've made Sydney Road look a little better for everyone who lives, works and visits here. Cleaner streets make it a nicer place to shop too, and that helps our local traders. And as everyone starts their day and the shops open, I get to meet some lovely community members and their dogs. Everyone knows Sydney Road is legendary. We should all show it some love.
Libraries are the heart of our community. They connect us, inspire us, and support lifelong learning.
Whether it's borrowing books, thank you,
learning how to use computers,
getting creative in our makerspaces,
or simply having a welcoming space to belong, the library is the place to be.
We're always evolving our spaces, collections and services to meet the diverse needs of our wonderful community.
I love my library. It's a safe place to be, it's inclusive. I always find something new that interests me. It's not just a place for books anymore.
A library has something for people of all ages.
And is a place of discovery, events and learning at every stage of life.
It's your library. Visit us today.
I think children should be in decision making because while they're young, they are really creative.
Parents should listen with an open mind. Everything the child says, it should be taken into account. What we say definitely matters, and we're humans too, even though we're younger.
At Merri-bek, we believe that all children's voices should be included in all decision making. We're very passionate that they have the same opportunities as adults do. We want to make sure that the voices of children really shine through, and the actions and the activities that we plan really reflect what their children's needs are.
If you want to ask your kid a question that could be kind of embarrassing in a way, you would want to make sure they're in a safe environment.
Our minds work different than what your minds work, so you should respect that. You should always listen to them, even when the idea sounds a bit funny or ridiculous.
I think it's important for children to be included in what they say, because they're humans too. They live life and they're around. It's not just the adults that should make the choices, because it impacts and affects them as well.
I think children should be involved in decision making because it's going to impact them later in the future when they're grown up in the next generation.
Children should have a say because they're going to be the future leaders. They should make decisions early on in life so they know what's to come.
The biggest takeaway is empowerment. We want children to really realise that they can have a say, that their voices matter, and that adults are really listening to them, and that they have the same opportunities as adults to make decisions in matters that impact them.
Did you know that Merri-bek is home to a diverse community where more than 95 languages are spoken? That's why we offer information on council services in your language. If you've received a rates notice that you don't understand, would like to request a new bin, or have another question for council, we can help. We have free in-person and phone interpreters who can help you communicate with staff at council in your language. To request an interpreter, simply call 9240 1111 and ask one of our customer service staff to organize one for you. You can also request an interpreter at one of our customer service centers, libraries, or maternal and child health centers. At Merri-bek, we're proud of our diverse community and we want to make sure everyone can access our services. For more information about our language services, please visit our website.
Wheel Sisters came about after some women in Fawkner approached us, wanting to learn to ride bikes and also find other women from their own community to ride with, including women who might ride in hijab or an abaya. One of the things that never gets old when you teach people to ride bikes is the sheer thrill they get when they realise they can do it.
The really special thing about teaching both the women in Fawkner and the women here is just the cultural barriers that they face every day, and coming from a place where they never thought they'd ever be able to ride a bike. A lot of them do reflect that it's been their lifelong dream to ride a bike, but they never thought they'd be able to do it. So it's just that extra level of being able to gift that to somebody.
I got really excited when I heard about this program. I'm almost 40 and I've never ridden a bike. I tried when I was little. Yeah, I still can't believe that I can ride, and yeah, it's been a dream and I'm so glad that it came true.
It was excellent, very special experience for me because it was my childhood wish to learn how to ride a bike.
Yeah, my experience was great because I've never ridden the bike before. So it was like truly empowering for me. And I thought I can't ever learn, but Kaz was really patient and encouraging.
At this age, it's a really courageous thing to learn new things. And any age, anyone can do it if they want it. And willingness is the most important things, and that's I prove myself.
I think it's good health-wise as well as environmentally. It gives me some physical activity to incorporate into my daily routine. I think it was great to find other people like me who have recently learned to ride, and we are all well connected now.
Yeah, after so many years, I'm very grateful to have this opportunity and have Cass and Faith with us. And they've been amazing, amazing teachers. Everybody should give it a go and see for themselves how easy it is. Yeah, because I never thought I could, and I'm able to do it now.
The compost that we receive from Merri-bek Council that's made from the waste from our green bins, the food and organics waste, is a fantastic resource. A lot of carbon, a lot of organic matter that goes to building up the soil here, combined with the compost that we make ourselves. A really brilliant resource for the garden, and it produces fantastic crops, as you can see behind me.
Well, obviously it's really important to compost food. If it's just going into the normal bin, then it's creating all these really bad greenhouse gases and contributing to climate change. But the benefit for community gardens is that we can't generate as much compost on our own, so we need the addition of council compost to help us grow vegetables and renew the soil so we get the best productivity from the garden.
Sometimes when we get the compost, there's contaminants in it, like plastics, biodegradable bags. Some of them are not quite suitable for the process that the compost goes through. We have to then sort through the compost and pull them out, otherwise they're going to contaminate all our vegetables and the earth that we're trying to re-nourish with the compost.
messages go around on Facebook saying, hey, there's zucchini or cucumbers in the basket at Pentridge and they're gone in, half an hour later. So we just like to share it with the community because that's what it's about.
In Merri-bek, we now have a 4-bin waste service. All households need to separate mixed recycling, glass recycling, food and garden organics, and general rubbish. This will help reduce the amount of waste we send to landfill and improve the quality of recyclables in Victoria. Glass bottles and jars now go in your new glass recycling bin. Lids must be firmly attached. Loose lids go in your general rubbish bin. Steel tins, aluminium cans and foil, paper and cardboard, and plastic bottles and containers go in your mixed recycling bin. Food scraps and garden clippings go in your food and garden organics bin. You can use paper towels to wrap your food waste. Put your glass bottles and jars, food scraps, and mixed recycling in the bin loose, not in bags. Plastic bags and other items that can't be reused or recycled go in your general rubbish bin. This includes kitty litter, animal droppings, old textiles, and nappies. General rubbish should be bagged or wrapped. Update your recycling knowledge today. Learn what goes in each bin by visiting merri-bek.vic.gov.au/recycling-guide.
Why did we decide to go all electric? The primary motivation was obviously to reduce our carbon footprint as a family, especially with a young.
Good evening, councillors, and to members of the gallery and to our audience live streaming tonight's council meeting at home. My name's Councillor Helen Davidson. I'm the Mayor of Merri-bek City Council and chairperson of tonight's meeting, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all this evening. We are meeting on the lands of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people, and I wish to acknowledge them as the traditional custodians of these lands and waterways, and I would like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, as well as to all First Nations communities who have contributed to the life of this city, and to any other elders of other communities that might be with us this evening. This council meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to council's website and to YouTube. This recording will also be available as video on demand. Attendees are advised that they will be recorded during this evening's meeting. A reminder that as councillors, we will act in accordance with the Councillor Code of Conduct, which secures the principles of leadership and good governance that secures public confidence in the office of councillor. In the event of an emergency, we will act in accordance with the Councillor Code of Conduct, which supports may be required for councillors to listen to security officers and to staff. Members of the gallery and councillors attending in person, please follow these directions of staff and security. So thank you for your attendance tonight. I'd like to welcome our councillors who we have here, and I'd like to introduce the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Helen Politis.
Good evening, everybody.
Councillor Chris Miles.
Evening.
Councillor Alice Venson.
Hello, everybody.
Councillor Oscar Yildiz.
Good evening.
Councillor Nat Abood.
Hello, everyone.
Councillor Sue Bolton. Councillor Liz Irvin.
Good evening, everyone.
Councillor Jay Iwasaki.
Hello, everyone.
And the following councillors have been approved to attend tonight's meeting online. Councillor Kat Theodosis.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Kat. And also Councillor Adam Pulford, who will be joining us shortly. I'd also like to introduce the Chief Executive Officer, Kathy Henderson, and the senior management team. There are no apologies for tonight's meeting and no leaves of absence. So I'll move on to disclosures of conflicts of interest. Councillors, are there any conflicts of interest to disclose from tonight's agenda? Oh, yes, Kathy Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to disclose a potential non-pecuniary material conflict of interest in relation to item 12.5.
Thank you, Kathy. When this item comes up in the agenda, I'll ask that you state the nature of the conflict again and leave the room, and we will call you back following that debate and vote. Councillors, I'll move on to confirmation of the minutes from our previous council meeting. Councillors, could I please have a motion for the confirmation of the minutes held on the 13th of August? Thank you, Councillor Iwasaki. Thank you, Councillor Irvin, to second that. All those in favour? I declare that carried. I will now move on to acknowledgements and other matters. So I'll outline how this segment will run. Provision of up to 10 minutes is provided for councillors to acknowledge and recognise achievements of local individuals and organisations and raise matters that are considered important to council that aren't on the agenda tonight. Councillors, is there an acknowledgement or another matter that you would like to raise this evening? I can go first. I have one from a delegation that I attended in August, which was for the Northern Council Alliance, a delegation to National Parliament for 3 days. So myself and 7 other mayors attended Parliament to advocate on key priorities for our local communities. One of those particularly important for us here in Merri-bek is the extension and duplication of the Upfield train line. So we met with several ministers, shadow ministers and MPs and advisors and senators. The other councillors that also attended spoke in relation to the Northern Regional Hospital, upgrades to the Hume Freeway and further development out north. I believe that the delegation was successful. The agenda of the Upfield train line is definitely on the ministers' minds, and the importance of it can't be understated for Merri-bek and our residents. Yeah. I'd also like to acknowledge the crisis in Nepal at the moment. We have a significant Nepalese community here, particularly in Glenroy, and my thoughts and prayers are with those that are injured during this difficult time, and we offer them all our support as they navigate this, this difficult moment in their history. I'd now like to turn to other councillors. So Deputy Mayor has an acknowledgement to make.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I had the pleasure of attending the men's shed in Glenroy today, and I just want to acknowledge the amazing work that goes on there and the support that men in that community are given. The men who were there today all shared with me that as a result of being part of this community program, they have have experienced an improvement in their physical, emotional well-being. It's improved their social connections and their well-being with the community, and as well as it's contributed to a stronger sense of belonging to the community. But in addition to that, I'd also like to highlight some of the community benefits that the Men's Shed provides. So they have helped to build a little library on casters for a local school. They prevent lots of stuff like chairs and tables and other bits of furniture from going into landfill by restoring them and by teaching other members of the community how to restore things. And the one wonderful thing that they offered to do is to teach me and any other member of the community who's interested in how to change a washer. So they do wonderful things for the community and I'd really like to commend their work. The other thing that I want to mention is that I also had the pleasure of having morning tea with the residents of the Barclay Street high-rise towers, and I'd like to commend the state government for putting in, notifying them that they're going to put in air conditioning into that building, which gives the residents, most of whom are elderly residents, not only some comfort during the peak heat period, but also some security that they are going to be there for a long period of time. And the final thing that I want to mention is that I had the pleasure of attending the over 60s male Brunswick Hockey Club event, and that team won, and they are playing in the grand final tonight. So go fellas, and here's the Brunswick Hockey Club.
Great, thanks
Thank
so much,
you.
Helen. Councillor Abood.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, there's a couple of things of note. I'll start with another grand final item. I found out today that Brunswick Juventus have made it to their grand final as well, so best of luck to that team. I want to draw people's attention to the fact that engage.vic.gov.au have released the maps for heights that we might expect with this. You know, we know we're in a housing crisis and we can all expect more density. If we can walk to the CBD, we've got to expect that, you know, we're going to have people living close to us, so those are worth a look. I'd like to commend Netchi, the Newlands neighbourhood house, on a most lovely picnic on the weekend, absolutely divine gathering of people outside in some spring sunshine, which was really lovely to be able to attend, and draw people's attention to the Transport Forum, which is happening on Saturday, and encourage people to get involved. I could go on for ages, but I'll let other people have a say.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Councillor Bolton.
Yes, so the council's running a transport forum or road safety forum on Saturday at 9:30 here in Cabrig Town Hall. And it is very serious because there are a lot of very dangerous intersections and roads throughout Merri-bek, but one which I visited just recently on the corner of Bakers Road and Sydney Road, North Coburg, is one where the shop on the corner has experienced dead bodies being ejected from cars when there's major crashes, a car flipping upside down and crashing through their front awning, and many other terrible, terrible things. It must be very traumatising for the workers in that store. And they probably have about 7 to 8 of these every year. These are the crashes involving, you know, sirens and police and ambulance and firefighters. So it is very important for council to be hosting this meeting on Saturday. Second thing I wanted to mention is the serious attack which happened about a week ago, where there was a mass racist rally in the city, a racist rally against migration, and a Nazi attack on an Aboriginal encampment, which is where a number of Aboriginal people are buried in the Domain. And the Nazis sort of attacked Camp Sovereignty in the same way that you imagine First World War soldiers going over the trenches. It was really terrible. It was a full-on attack, leaving people in hospital. And I think this is a bit of a warning bell because there are a lot of mainstream politicians who have enabled the Nazis, who've seen it as not being a very serious threat, etc. And, you know, historically in Australia, this is a bit of an echo of what happened in the 1930s when there was a Nazi movement that attacked gatherings of workers and other community-minded people and made racist attacks and so forth. So there are going to be sovereignty is never ceded rallies organised by the Aboriginal community throughout Australia this coming Saturday, because there's also another mass racist rally against migration and involving the Nazis happening this Saturday as well. So it is something that we, you know, definitely need to show that racism and Nazis are unacceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. We have just under 2 minutes, but go ahead, Councillor Irvin.
I have two quick items.
Yes.
Just firstly, I attended the Brunswick Community History Group meeting over the weekend, which was a talk about the history of Sydney Road, which was really fascinating just to discover more about this really important spine in our municipality. And I'd also like to give some recognition to Valaris Music, a shop on Sydney Road that this year is celebrating its 50-year anniversary. And it's quite incredible to think that a business can be a really thriving central part of the community for that long. Obviously, a lot has changed around it, but it's been a really consistent part of the community for that time. So congratulations to Valaris Music.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Irvin. Are there any further acknowledgements from councillors? No? That's great. Right on time. We'll now move on to petitions. There are no petitions listed in the agenda tonight. Are there petitions to be tabled by councillors? No. If there's no petitions, we can move on to question time and community statements. I'll outline how this section will work. The time provided for questions and statements is 30 minutes, and this time can be extended by another 30 minutes by resolution of council. If we don't have time to answer your question this evening, it will be taken on notice and responded to in writing. Priority will be given to questions and statements that relate to matters listed in the agenda. If time allows, questions about items other than those listed in the agenda will be considered. There's a maximum of 2 questions or statements in any combination, and that is allowed per person, and they need to relate to matters in the agenda, and those ones will be dealt with first. If you have registered to ask a question, when I invite you or your representative, please state your name and suburb, and then ask your question with the preamble or background for up to 3 minutes. If you have registered to make a statement, when I invite you, please state your name and suburb and make your statement without taking longer than 3 minutes. If you've submitted a second question or indicated you have a second statement, it may be deferred until all other persons who have submitted questions have asked their first question or not be asked if time does not permit. There's a maximum of 3 questions to be heard on any one subject, and we'll then proceed to the next topic. If time allows, we'll return to the previous topic. I will either answer the questions on council's behalf or invite a councillor or director to answer, or through the CEO to provide a response. There'll be no response or discussion in relation to community statements. As detailed in the governance rules, questions or statements may be disallowed if they are defamatory, indecent, abusive, offensive, irrelevant, trivial in nature, or objectionable in language or substance. If a response to your question is provided at tonight's meeting, there won't be any further follow-up. However, council will action any commitments made in answering these questions. So council's received a total of 32 questions tonight. It's quite considerable, and 17 and statements. 17 of those have been taken on notice. So we'll move to the reports, and we have the adoption of the Merri-bek Community Vision, and we have Sally Warmington in person with a statement and a question. Sally.
Hi. Hello, everybody. So, yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep. So my name's Sally Walmington. I'm from Pascoe Vale. So I've got a brief statement and follow-up question. So I'm speaking on behalf of Merri-bek Residents for Reconciliation Action. We support traditional owners and other First Nations residents and demonstrate community support for the First Nations Advisory Committee. We provided feedback to the review of the Community Vision and Council Plan. We commend Council's commitment to Merri-bek's First Nations communities and to the Ballard Maroop site's development by Wurundjeri Woiwurrung as a culturally safe gathering place, with a statement to this effect now included in the Council Plan. We support the development of a Merri-bek Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander strategy, which should include measures of progress towards agreed goals, and the development of a Ballard Maroop business case in partnership with Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and the First Nations Advisory Committee. Earlier this year, we supported a First Nations Advisory Committee proposal for $500,000 to be allocated in the 2025-29 budget for building and cultural activities on the Ballard Maroop site. This was not adopted by Council, which we see as a missed opportunity to demonstrate Council's commitment to the project. My question is, how will progress towards the Ballard Maroop site becoming a culturally safe gathering space happen without funds allocated in the 2025-29 budget? And if state government funding is not secured, how will Council make good on its commitments to the project?
Thank you, Sally. I'll hand over to the Director responsible, Eamon, who will be able to answer your question.
Thank you, Mayor Through. Thanks very much for your question, Sally. As part of the 2025-26 budget process, Council actually allocated a surplus amount of $503,000 to support this project. And this was approved at the special council meeting in June when the budget was adopted. So those funds will be held and used if external grants or state funding is not successful to ensure the project can continue to move forward. So there's a funding allocation there that can be drawn on if other sources don't eventuate.
Thank you, Eamon. My apologies, I didn't realise that was off. So we've moved on to the draft domestic animal management plan. And the first person who has a question is Rachel Weaver, who is online, and that is a statement, not a question. Thank you, Rachel. Rachel, can you hear us? Please go ahead with your statement.
Thank you kindly.
Yes.
Yes, I'm Rachel Weaver and I'm calling in from Wurundjeri land in the Macedon Ranges. And my statement, I'm just going to read it. Sorry if I appear to be gazing off, it's on another screen. I would like to express my strong support for the initiative to introduce 24-hour cat containment. I'm working on a large-scale research project funded by the Australian Research Council about biodiversity impacts on native bird species since the beginnings of European colonisation in Australia. For many years, I was also a resident of Brunswick. Colonial impacts on species have been and continue to be almost unfathomable. Domestic cats are not the only cause for avian biodiversity decline, but they're one of the greatest. Pet cats kill millions of native birds every year, including endangered species. With the possibility of H5N1 bird flu arriving in Australia, there is an even more urgent need to take protective action. Containing cats is a relatively simple but effective step, and one that most responsible owners will be willing to undertake. This would also show Merri-bek Council's commitment to caring for species and offer a compelling example to other councils who undertake similar initiatives. Thank you for considering my perspective, and I hope you'll succeed in implementing this important strategy for conserving our native birds.
Thanks very much for your statement, Rachel.
Thank you kindly.
We now have a statement and a question from Joe Cannellan, who is in person in the audience this evening. Hi, Joe. Yes.
Is that it? Right. Okay. Okay. Thanks, councillors, for listening to me. I put a statement in, which I presume you've all read. And I guess the main gist of what I wanted to say is if you're going to do something about wildlife, which I assume is the predominant reason why you're interested in managing cats, think about the most effective way that you can do that. The way that's measurable. In 4 years' time, if you say that the main technique is a 24-hour curfew, you will know that there will be less birds killed, but how many you won't know and to what extent you won't know. A way that you could measure it is to actually have a very proactive program of, and I mean that not just picking out where the colonies are, but to go across the city over 2 years, moving from one colony, one area where the strays, so that by the end of 2 years or 3 years, however long it takes, but the quicker the better actually, where you actually go and gather up the strays. This has been done before. It was done 50 years ago in Venice. They did exactly this. They went area to area, they gathered all the cats up, took them, neutered them, rehomed them. So if you're going to put resources into this, then that would be my suggestion of where you put resources. The end of 4 years, the end of this stamp, you'll be able to say, we had an estimated whatever, and I saw a figure of 6,000 in Google when I Googled how many stray cats in Merri-bek. No idea where that came from, but assuming it's 6,000, you would be able to say, at the end of that time, there's 3,000 less. And not just 3,000 less cats, but 3,000 plus all the progeny they would have had over that 4 years. So you could, with certainty, say there's a significant impact on what it's done for all animals, not just birds. And the one other thing I'd like you to think about, if you have a 24-hour curfew, practically how on earth do you, and this is what all councillors have never been able to do, how do you implement it? You know, if someone rings up and says Fluffy from number 6 is out on the road, what do? Do you send the bylaws officer down there? Fluffy may or may not be there when you get there. How do you prove it was Fluffy? Because even if Fluffy's still there, they'll disappear if you get out of the car and go towards them. How do you actually implement a curfew for cats? You potentially will end up with having neighbours you'll have neighbours dobbing in, that's how it will work it out, but you'll have them also trapping them. In other cities that's happened. There's quite cruel trapping practices of neighbours have trapped their neighbourhood cats and brought them in, and you'll have to deal with not just the cat but the neighbourhood dispute. For what? The only other way you could do that is you'd have a whole team of bylaws officers which roam the streets 24 hours a day trying to see what's going on. So thinking about how much resources you've got, and where's the way that you could most effectively deploy that in a way that's measurable to you. Thank you. I had some questions, but I'm happy for them to be on notice. They were just data questions, really, that I didn't know.
Right, that's fine if you're happy to have to go on notice. Thank you, Joe. Next up we have Jacinta Humphrey, who is online with a statement on the same report. Hi, Jacinta.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me along this evening. I'm Jacinta Humphrey. I'm an urban ecologist based at RMIT University in Melbourne, and I'm an expert in native birds, particularly those that live in cities. So this evening, I just wanted to express my strong support for your draft domestic animal management plan, in particular, the inclusion of 24-hour cat containment, which you're considering for bringing in for next year. And the reason I'm in support of this is kind of threefold. Firstly, there's very strong evidence that cats, both feral cats and domestic pet cats, have catastrophic effects or impacts on our native wildlife, particularly on birds. There's also really strong evidence to suggest that cats that are safely contained within our properties actually live longer. They're far safer because they're protected against things like being hit by cars, attacked by dogs, foxes, There's also issues with disease risk as well, and they don't face any of that when they're safely contained at home. And thirdly, there's actually very strong evidence to suggest that the Australian public supports this and wants this to happen all across the country, but in particular in our cities. So there was a study done by the Victorian state government called the Victorians Valuing Nature Survey, and they actually found that 70% of the people that responded were in support of some form of cat containment, and 61% wanted to see 24-hour cat containment. And I'm certainly one of them. In fact, here is one of my cats right now. I'm the proud owner of 2 indoor-only cats. They cannot leave my property. They do have their own little secure outdoor cat enclosure, or what some people might call a catio. So they still get the opportunity to go outside, experience sunshine, fresh air, but it's impossible for them to leave. So they're nice and safe, and it's also impossible for them to interact with any of our unique native wildlife. And I really think that's the best of both worlds, because that way we're protecting our native species and we're also looking after our feline companions. So that's really all I've got to share this evening. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Jacinta. Next on the same topic, in person, we have Beth Healy, who has 2 questions for us.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm not Beth Healy. Beth Healy can't make it tonight. I'm her representative. My name is Simon Xue. I'm a resident of Pascoe Vale.
Thank you.
Her first question is, we know that a cat curfew will significantly discourage cat ownership due to the cost and logistic burden, especially for the elderly and low-income persons. What does Council plan to do about the subsequent reduction in adoptions and the increase in euthanasia?
Thank you. I'll hand over to the responsible director, who is Anita, to answer your question.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, thank you for asking Beth's question on her behalf. Before I address the first question, I'd like to advise there's no evidence that cat ownership reduces when a cat curfew is introduced. Careful introduction of a curfew with accessible information, support and advice for people who are concerned about the change has led to successful introduction of cat curfews elsewhere. There's been a lot of work done by cat and wildlife welfare groups on helping cats to adapt. There are resources available from Zoos Victoria, RSPCA, Animal Welfare Victoria and several councils. Merri-bek also has information already available to support people containing their cats. And if a 24-hour cat curfew is adopted, we will work to increase the availability and accessibility of this information for cat owners. It's not intended that the cat curfew would be systematically enforced. In fact, enforcement would be a last resort, with the approach to compliance being about education, support and warnings. Council's enforcement framework is sector-leading in its application of compassion and consideration of special circumstances, and this would also apply to enforcing a cat curfew. Your question comes with an underlying assumption that a cat curfew will drive animal surrenders or dissuade people from adopting a cat that needs a home, putting pressure on the pound and animal rescue groups. There is strong support for cat curfews from the Watjering Animal Facility, where Merri-bek's animals are taken, and from the Cat Protection Society and the RSPCA, among other welfare groups. Rather than undermining the work of these groups and veterinarians, a cat curfew supports the work they do and allows them to focus on cats that do not have homes, to have them placed into homes. When an animal management officer is attending to stray cats, rather than taking them straight to the pound, they check for a microchip or identification. Then they're returned to their owners. And if a curfew is introduced, they would then remind the owner about the curfew and see if they need any support with it, rather than taking them to the pound. If they're not identifiable, we seek to find out from the person reporting or others in the neighbourhood which property the cat seems to belong to, and speak to the people at that property about whether they would like to have this cat as their own. being microchipped, vaccinated, desexed, and having the first year of registration free. This reduces rather than increases the burden on the facility and rescue groups.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you very much for asking the question on behalf of Beth.
She does have a second question. Can I ask that, or is that all the questions?
Oh, right. I thought there was two there. Oh, that was only one. Yes, please go ahead. Yes.
Sure. Thank you. Her second question is, how does council measure if the 24-hour cat curfew works? And what specific evidence do you have right now to show that it does work?
Thank you. I'll hand that back to Anita.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll use the example of Whittlesea, which introduced a 24-hour curfew in 2023, and the number of cat nuisance calls that have been made to that council has reduced by 40%. So the number of cat nuisance calls is a really important indicator, and a reduction in calls about nuisance cats, so stray cats, means that animal management officers can direct their time to work that brings about sustainable change instead of attending to stray cats. So over time, we would expect the combination of the cat curfew and expanded desexing and homing program for unowned cats would drive down the nuisance calls even further. Looking long-term at data for Merri-bek, it is clear that as we've introduced desexing programs and as our number of cat registrations has increased, we've had fewer cats impounded, and the curfew is an important next step in driving this down further.
Thank you for your answer.
Thank you very much for your questions. The next report we have on the agenda is the State Election Advocacy Priorities, and Andrea Bunting has a statement and is in person. Hi, Andrea.
Hi. Hello, Mayor and Councillors. Andrea Bunting from Brunswick, convener of Walk on Merri-bek. I'm also speaking on behalf of the Livable Sydney Road, Coburg North and Fawkner campaign, who couldn't be here tonight, and Climate Action Merri-bek, with our convener Maggie Cowling, who is here, being a Coburg North resident. We are requesting an item be added under Part D of Election Advocacy Priorities, Road Safety. And this is the suggestion. Improve safety along Sydney Road in the 60 kilometres per hour section between and including O'Hay Street and Boundary Road to address the high rate of injury and fatality crashes, and in particular the high casualty rate of pedestrians crossing at the signalised intersections. We believe that if council is to advocate for road safety, then they need to include our most unsafe roads. And this needs to be based on data. So the government publishes data for road crashes where someone is taken to hospital or killed. So I looked at the last 2 years of this data to compare the number of injuries and fatalities per year per kilometre of road, which I think is a good way of comparing roads. I broke Sydney Road up into 3 sections based on the speed limit, the lower one, the 60k, and then the 70k. Now, the most dangerous stretch of road in the whole of Merri-bek, by a considerable margin, is Sydney Road between O'Hay Street and Boundary Road. That's the 60 kilometres an hour section. On average, someone is taken to hospital every 2 weeks on this short stretch of road, which is just over 2 kilometres long. Now, this road is not an activity centre, but for vulnerable road users, it is our second most hazardous road for serious injuries and fatalities after Lygon Street. So, Sydney Road between O'Hay Street and Boundary Road, this 60k section, has 2 secondary schools and is close to a primary school. It is a route to the shops and recreation facilities, and there's a large retirement village planned for this area. So lots of seniors crossing the road who are also particularly vulnerable. Now, we've had lots of talk about this section. There was a council motion in 2023 There is currently a road safety campaign, that's the Livable Sydney Road folk. They are active on social media, and there is an active petition to Parliament. So there is a lot of community interest in this road. So could you please add this to your advocacy priorities?
Thank you.
Thank
Impeccable timing. I'll hand over to Kathy. Oh no, there's no question. So thank you very much for that, Andrea. Yes, that is the question. Yes. Next, we have for the notice of motion, Merri-bek team for 2026 Youth Parliament program, Gabrielle DeFalco, who is online with a statement. Oh, right. Gabrielle is not online at the moment, so we'll try to return to see if she's there later on. But we have on the same topic, Halal Baruti, who is online. No. Unfortunately, neither are online at the moment. The next item is the notice of motion for procurement policy and sub-minimum wages for disabled people in segregated workplaces. And we have a question online from Deb Agnew-Riddle. Oh, great. Yes. Hi, Deb.
Hello, how are you?
Good, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, you caught me on the hop. Give me a second while I pull my message up again.
No problem, take your time.
Okay. What I was wondering is in accordance, oh, sorry, there goes my phone, pardon me. In accordance with relevant international treaties, including, for example, International Labour Organisation conventions and the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, does Council currently hold contracts with any entities that pay sub-minimal wages to disabled people or may be engaged in practices considered modern slavery? If so, could Council please provide the names of those entities and specify the industries in which these contracts are held?
Thank you.
That's my question.
Thanks very much, Deb. I'll hand over to the responsible director, Sue, to answer your question.
Beautiful, thank you.
Through the Mayor, thank you, Deb, for your question. So Council does not engage with suppliers that are in breach of the Modern Slavery Act, and therefore we don't have any names of such entities, which is part of your question. However, Council may engage suppliers that pay sub-minimum wages to staff such as apprenticeships, trainees, junior employees, and also employees with a disability. However, these sub-minimum wages in Victoria are lawful under the Fair Work Act 2009, and Council doesn't specifically collect any information or sub-minimum wage information on entities that are lawfully or may be lawfully paying such wages to their staff. Thanks, Deb.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your question, Deb. Next online we have, I believe it was just one question. Next online we have Sir Arnie McNeil with one statement. Hi, Sir Arnie.
It's just one question.
Please go ahead. You're up on the screen now.
I have Sir Arnie McNeil with one statement.
Yes, I'm Savani McNeil, and I have a lived experience of
Go ahead, you're up on the screen.
You're going to need to mute your other device because it's playing in the background, Sir Arnie. Take your time.
I'm Savani McNeil, and I have a lived experience of
Go ahead, you're up on the screen. you're going to need to mute your other device because it's playing in the background.
I don't think we've got caption. I don't think.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
I'm Samani McNeil, and I have a lived experience of hearing impairment and autism, and I have had some forms of exploitation in the workplaces, such as working in a social enterprise called All Things Equal, and they were using NDIS funding, as well as using as well as paying me, but in saying that it wasn't like a well-paid sort of thing. It was much more of a difficult thing. It wasn't like there was anything which was on a mutual basis, if that makes sense, because like none of the staff members had a disability, lived experience of disability. So higher up you go, there's no lived experience of disability, and then and the lower you go, there is lived experience of disability, but in saying that they treat people, they say they're equal, but it's not necessarily equal with the wage. It's just a theft in some ways. It, I personally, because I was paid properly, but what an 18-year-old would get for like an older person, and I think that is really really exploitive. And I would like to say that that the that I am a board member for Fair Go Australia and the Disability Justice Australia, as well as the PWA, and I have got this experience of governance, and I don't think we're doing enough in that space. And I would like to just say that, let me just have a look. What did I want to say? I also want to just say that when I started cybersecurity without a degree, because I couldn't do the university courses because of my disability. Even though it was a disability non-for-profit, they still paid me less, which meant and it's not run by people with lived experience of disability. And I don't think we should be letting people without lived experience of disability actually work in these places, personally. But I understand that someone needs to run it for some things, but and it wasn't really covering basic cost, and yeah, so my skills and contributions were not being valued at a fair rate and accepted less than equal, just because of the circumstances. So, and I would like to say that the majority of disabled people overwhelmingly oppose the minimum wage and modern slavery, as their voices have reflected in the Disability Royal Commission in our DPROs. DPROs are organisations whose membership and leadership are composed of at least 51% disabled people, and who government bodies are obligated to consult on these issues under the Articles 4, 3 and 33 of the UN Convention of the Rights of People with Disability. And also the public also rejects the sub-minimum wages poll by Down Syndrome Australian March 2012. Research showed 82% of Australians find minimum wage unacceptable, and Merri-bek Council may not know if it's funding this or not, but we would like to investigate this. There is a lot of more employment for autistic people, but not enough for women, and this needs to change the mindset and the lack of understanding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I appreciate you coming online tonight. Now, councillors, we will need a motion to extend question time. Moved by Councillor Aboud, seconded by Councillor Svensson. All those in favour? I declare that carried. We now have a question, two statements on the notice of motion 8.3, famine in Gaza, and we have Sarah El-Assad, who is in person. Please come forward to the lectern, Sarah.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, sorry.
Good evening. Is the green light on?
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah El-Assad, and I'm a proud Palestinian woman. I'm a resident of Hatfield. I come before you today not just as a Palestinian, but as a fellow human being, for all of us to see one another with eyes of compassion. Over the past 1 year, 11 months, and 3 days, we have witnessed an unfolding humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, a crisis marked by a widespread destruction, a man-made famine, and a genocide. Driven by the denial of essential resources, forced starvation, and the relentless bombardment by the Israeli Defense Force. And more recently, just in the past 24 hours, Israel has not just bombed Gaza, but has bombed also Syria, Lebanon, Tunisia, and Qatar. If you choose to ignore what is happening to the Palestinian people, what does that say about the human being you are? If Israel gets away with destroying Gaza, then that will give a green light to all other dictatorial regimes to do similar things. I want to tell you today about the story of Hind Rajab. Hind was just 5 years old, a child trying to escape the bombing in Gaza with her family. Their car came under attack, and only Hind and her cousins survived the initial strike. They were left trapped and terrified. A Palestinian Red Crescent operator was on the phone with Hind's cousin, who was begging for help. But instead of rescue, more gunfire came. In just 6 seconds, she was shot 64 times by an Israeli tank. And later, Hind was also killed. That tank was so close it could see that they were just 2 children, alone and surrounded by the bodies of their family. Yet a total of 335 bullets were shot into that car. If this is not a war crime, what is? I rise today to bring forward a recommendation that reflects a deep concern and compassion for the ongoing loss of life and human dignity shared by the many residents in our Merri-bek community. In that spirit, I put forward the following. Firstly, as a citizen of Merri-bek Council, I urge you to acknowledge our distress as local residents for what is happening in Gaza by raising the Palestinian flag and to show your statement against injustice and your solidarity against human suffering. Secondly, I recommend that our representative council members add their voices to call for Australia to sanction Israel until a permanent ceasefire is enacted and until the siege on Gaza is lifted, allowing food and aid to enter Gaza. And lastly, I recommend the Council to mark the United Nations recognized International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people on the 29th of November with an event or support for a Palestinian event. I have seen Merri-bek proudly support First Nations struggles and supporting refugees and human rights causes. Let us continue that legacy now by raising the Palestinian flag, because history will remember where we stood. Let it remember we stood on the side of humanity, and let Gaza know that we care. Thank you for listening. Sarah El-Assad, Palestinian community support worker and social work student at RMIT.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Next, we have a statement from Veronica Sherman.
Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Veronica Sherman, and I live in Brunswick East. I was born in Sweden, and at age 10, I immigrated to Israel with my family. At age 20, after my army service, I moved to Australia, and I have lived here for 30 years. Every month since October 7th, 2023, I have been hosting Gaza discussion groups. I have wanted to create a safe and calm place where we can come together in person to listen, learn, and grieve. Last month, 4 out of the 5 people who came along either had a parent or a grandparent who was in the Holocaust. Each one of them spoke about what it's like to grow up in the shadow of a genocide, and why being a descendant of a Holocaust survivor is the reason they are now speaking up for the people being murdered in Gaza. All of them agree that we can't remain silent during a genocide. Never again is for everyone. One comment has stayed with me for the whole month. My grandmother told me that when she heard that people in other countries knew about what was happening to them, even though it didn't change their situation, it gave her hope and a feeling of not being alone. Collective solidarity is powerful. The biggest lie we can tell ourselves is that we are powerless. The reason I'm here tonight is to ask you to raise the Palestinian flag. Not because I think that Merri-bek Council can stop a genocide in Gaza, but because I want to live in a community that shows solidarity with the oppressed. I want to live in a community that doesn't remain silent during a genocide. A flag is just a flag. For most people, it doesn't hold much meaning. But at this point in history, it's one of the few ways we can show our support. Not just to the families trapped in an ongoing nightmare in Gaza and their relatives here in Merri-bek who wake up every morning having to check if a loved ones are still alive, but also for the wider Muslim community whose identity is intertwined in the Palestinian plight for freedom. I would love to not raise the Palestinian flag. I would much prefer another solution to show solidarity. But I honestly can't think of anything that is more meaningful and effective. And it's so ridiculously easy and budget-friendly. We have a moral obligation to not remain silent. Raising the flag is raising our collective voice. I spoke outside tonight, and I said that whoever votes no to raising the flag, I would like to invite you to have coffee with me this week. I would love to sit down with you face to face and just really hear why you would say no to such a simple act of solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I understand that Gabrielle DeFarco, who wished to speak in relation to the Merri-bek Youth Parliament, is online. Gabrielle? Hi, Gabrielle. We can see that you're there, but we can't see an image of you. Yes, now we can. And we can't hear you as yet.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Is
that's
that all good?
much better. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Just a bit of a background on myself to start, I guess. So I'm actually right now in Phillip Island attending school, but I'm a born and raised Merri-bek resident from Pascoe Vale South. And as I have done the Youth Parliament program for 2 years as a participant, I can attest to how truly special this program is for young people across Victoria. And particularly as a former high school student in Merri-bek, I found it quite fascinating that I had to move away from the area to discover that such an opportunity existed. And I think that this is something that we can't afford to let us pass us by, especially in a council area, in a community where there's such diverse and passionate young people who want to get involved. So I think it's extremely important that we that we get involved with this. This program basically simulates real state parliament, and it's accessible to people from ages 18 to 25 all across Victoria. This program puts everybody on an equal playing field, regardless of race, gender, background, experience in public speaking, knowledge of the political system. It is an incredible way to get Victorian students and young people involved in civics, which I think is something that overall in Victoria, but especially in Merri-bek, we should be encouraging. So I think it is extremely crucial that we get a real buy-in from council. It's very important that the 6 young people who may be eventually chosen to participate in this program have access to council employees who can liaise with Youth Parliament task force or Youth Parliament volunteer staff. So there is a trusted council employees who can offer support in such a space. And it's also very important. I cannot stress enough how much more this program can get out of kids who do not have any other avenue to access the program. So I know that there's a lot of schools who do put forward teams. So I feel like if this program goes through and the council does support such a team, we should target kids who are very keen to do this program but have no access to it through their school, because that means that we're giving these kids a chance to shine in Parliament House, and that is very special. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for your statement. So that concludes question time. We'll now move on to council reports. And the first report we have to consider this evening is the adoption of the Merri-bek Community Vision 2025 to 2035, Merri-bek Council Plan 2025 to 2029, and Merri-bek Council Action Plan 2025 to 2026. Is there a... I'm going to stick to the agenda item because I know there's some people in the gallery waiting for those reports to come through. So is there a councillor who would like to move the first report? Councillor Bolton, thank you. And is there a seconder? Councillor Politis.
I've got an amended version of this.
Oh, right, Councillor Bolton. Well, I'll wait until you detail that, and then Councillor Politis can decide to second.
Okay, just getting the wording up. Okay, yeah. So my additional point is at point 3 to include an action in the council action plan for under the heading of Theme 2, Healthy and Inclusive Communities, to add an extra initiative to read explore, including through partnership agreements, ways to improve health, access and inclusiveness in public and private spaces for people in precarious housing, such as access to toilets and bathrooms, seating under shelter, showers, lockers and a place to heat food, as well as improved access to services. If someone's prepared to second it, I'll explain why I've amended it.
If there's no seconder, that will lapse. Councillors, is there someone...
Shocking.
Is there a councillor who wishes
people don't get
to move the report? Councillor Svensson. Is there a seconder? Oh, you were seconding Councillor Bolton. Okay, thank you. Councillor Bolton, please.
Thank you. This is very important because my amended version is very important because too many councils at the moment are adopting a security approach to sweep people off the streets. And I did notice a gap in the community vision where it talks about inclusive communities and so forth. And while it did talk about inclusiveness for a number of different parts of the community, what I noticed was excluded is people who are in precarious housing who might be on the street a lot. And so this amendment is to provide facilities for people who are in precarious housing or rough sleepers to have access to the basic facilities that we all think are basic human rights, such as access to toilets, which are often locked at night so that people who are homeless have no access to toilets or bathrooms. Council's recently removed seating under shelters in Coburg Mall, but also places for lockers so people are not dragging gear around, and a place to be able to heat up food. I mean, there are many other positive proposals in the community vision and council plan, including around Ballot Maroop and many other things regarding all different elements of the community, from elderly people to young people to children to parks and gardens to, you know, all sorts of different things that are really important for the community. But I felt that this really needs to be added because this is the most excluded part of the community, and we need to make a commitment to improving the lives of people who are in precarious housing.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Svensson.
Wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Bolton's comments. No need to add further.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Are there any speakers against? Are there any speakers for? Councillor Abood.
I think I just want to acknowledge all of the incredible work that's gone into the council plan. This is something that pretty much as soon as we met each other, one of the first things we did is sat together for the weekend and started talking about this work, which is why I think that additional point 2.9 at theme 2 arriving now probably shocked some of us because it's the first time it's been raised, and I do think that it's something that we will all support, especially considering that it talks about exploring these options and also the partnership arrangements, which are important for us. Most of what we do is in partnerships, especially the stuff that's successful. So I guess what I want to do is really commend all of the work that's happened over, you know, it feels like it's almost been a year that we've been talking about what the next council plan will look like, and just stress the importance of being available to be in these conversations and bring this stuff up so that it has time for us to, you know, be all together and arrive at the same position together, rather than kind of be blindsided with some of the last minute stuff that feels like we've been wedged into not supporting something that is something that we care about.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. If there's no further speakers, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. It was unanimous, yeah. The next item on the agenda is 7.2, Children, Young People and Families Plan 2021 to 2025, 4-year review. Is there a councillor who wishes to move? Councillor Svensson, and a seconder? Councillor Politis. Councillor Svensson.
So this report is a review of how we're tracking in year 4 of our Children, Young People and Families Plan. I'd really encourage people to read it if you care about what's happening for children, young people, or families. There's some really amazing achievements that that are highlighted in the review and that have happened across those 4 years. But just in the last year, I'll mention a couple that I think are great. There's been an expansion of the youth takeover program at our libraries, which provides an opportunity for young people to have a free, accessible and fun space to do activities in the libraries outside of school time. There's been story time sessions delivered in 7 different community languages for young people and families. There's been continued planning of our upcoming Brunswick Early Years Hub project, which is going to be absolutely fantastic when it's finished. It looks really, really cool. There's been an expansion of our breastfeeding clinic, the inclusion of LGBTIQA+ families through Rainbow Storytime and Rainbow Family Group, and young people. Among lots of other cool things, young people are being supported to contribute to council strategies and programs through the Youth Ambassador program, which is amazing. And actually meeting with the youth ambassadors and talking to them was part of what spurred me on to submit one of my notices of motion later in this meeting. So they're a really engaged, fantastic group of young people. Our updated plan for the next 4 years will be coming to council in December, so watch that space if you'd like to see what we've got coming up.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Councillor Politis, do you wish to add anything?
Only that I'm happy to endorse this report. I'm a mother of 2 sons who fit in to this age demographic, and anything that assists them to become more engaged in this community is fantastic.
Thank you. Are there any speakers against the report? No, if there's no speakers against, I'll put the report to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried, and that was also unanimous. We now have the draft Domestic Animal Management Plan 2025 to 2029 endorsement for exhibition. Okay, gosh, hang on. I looked over at Sue first. Councillor Bolton, go ahead.
I've got an alternative resolution, which is different to what's in the council agenda. So this is on the Domestic Animal Management Plan. So the changes I'm proposing, if I get a second, I'll speak to them, is to replace one of the dot points with a more expansive point, to implement a 4-year rolling program throughout all of Merri-bek to collect, neuter, vaccinate, microchip and rehome unowned and semi-owned cats. The initial focus would be in areas with high volumes of cat nuisance complaints and it would use the Banyule model of engaging residents who feed cats to take ownership, including providing free registration for the first year when someone takes on ownership responsibility for a semi-owned cat. Then secondly, data on nuisance complaints, impoundments and euthanasia to be collected before the program begins and at the end of 4 years. This data will be reported publicly, investigate additional ways of monitoring the size of the population of unowned and semi-owned cats. That's probably the key element, but also to add an extra sentence in the introduction to the DAMP, which indicates that Merri-bek Council's approach is to have an evidence-based approach to protecting wildlife, as well as a humane approach to addressing the overpopulation of semi-owned and unowned cats. And then to note that my proposal does not include a cat curfew.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Is there a seconder? Councillor Miles? Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Do you wish to speak to the amended report?
Yeah, I would like to speak to this, and I know there's emotions run high on both sides of this debate for understandable reasons, because I think most people on both sides of the debate are motivated by wanting to protect wildlife. And I used to be someone who used to support cat curfews on the basis of protecting wildlife until really it came up on this council a couple of years ago. And I started to realise that really the best focus is to focus on unowned and semi-owned cats. And especially when you think of the fact that cats are fertile from the age of 4 to 6 months old and can have between 4 and 6 litters of 4 to 6 kittens in each litter a year. So that's a lot of cats. And so if we really want to devote resources to reducing the population of cats, we really need to focus our resources primarily on reducing the number of unowned and semi-owned cats and persuading people who are feeding semi-owned cats but not taking ownership of them to take full responsibility. And I believe a curfew is a barrier to that. If we implement a full program of this, we need to be able to take the data before the program begins and after the program ends. I am aware of examples. Joe Cannellan mentioned the example of Venice, but also Melbourne Uni had something similar where there was a concerted cat desexing program where there's a huge problem with cats, and the cats basically died out naturally in a humane way because of an energetic desexing program. I think that is clearly the best way forward, combined with concerted education to educate people about the value of keeping their cats in at night and strategies for keeping their cats in at night, and also assistance to people who need enclosures. I think there should be some sort of grant program to assist people. But I'm also aware of some people who have, that's time, is it? Okay.
You've got.
Okay, already, okay. But I think certainly the Banual program, now I gather they're not pursuing it any longer, but it was very successful in uniting semi-owned cats with people who are feeding them occasionally. And the animal officer in that particular case was someone who spent a lot of time, in particular, working with people on very low incomes who didn't trust authorities and would not have been at all responsive to an animal officer who came down heavily on them, but did respond to a really educational approach. That's it, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Miles.
No, I think Councillor Bolton's covered everything I would have said.
Thank you. Is there a person who wishes to speak against? Councillor Svensson.
Hi. So I intend, if this motion isn't successful, to move an alternative motion that includes that is largely the officer's recommendation, including a 24-hour cat curfew, but also includes a program that would be a grant program to support low-income people like renters to successfully transition their cats to living indoors. And I think everyone around this table really wants, as has been mentioned, a evidence-based and humane approach to cat containment and to all of our animal management around Merri-bek. But if we want to follow the evidence base is extraordinarily clear that we need cat containment if we're going to both protect cats, but also to protect wildlife. I mean, I'm a cat lover myself. I have 3 cats, and I've had cats throughout my entire life. We heard from experts earlier about the evidence base when it comes to cat containment, and I think it's unfair to pose this debate as an either or, that we either do an educative approach and look at addressing stray and unknown cats, or we do cat containment. I think both are incredibly important, and we can and we should do both. Now, I know my colleagues will speak to a lot of the wildlife benefits to cat containment and also the overwhelming community support for cat containment, but I just want to focus quickly on the benefits to cats if you have a 24-hour cat containment policy. So I'm going to mention some statistics. All of these references can be found on the RSPCA's Rethink Roaming website. But if you let your cat roam, that cuts an average of 10 years off of their life expectancy. It increases their risk of an early death by 300% and lifetime vet bills by 400%. Keeping cats contained reduces illness, injury, and death. And when you factor in vet bills, it's often actually cheaper too. A 24-hour cat curfew makes it a lot easier also for lost cats to be reunited with their families. Currently, less than 10% of lost cats ever get returned home. It also makes it much easier to identify stray cats, which makes targeted initiatives to care for them much easier to deliver, like the ones in our DAMP, which include targeted desexing and rehoming programs. I know that many people are reasonably worried about the impact that a 24-hour curfew might have on renters or low-income residents, and that's why I've prepared this alternative motion that pairs cat containment with real practical supports for those people. Our community cares deeply about animals. A 24-hour cat curfew supported by practical help for renters and low-income residents is a kind, common sense step that will spare families the pain that my family went through when I had cats as a child. My 3 childhood cats that I had all were hit by cars at different times. I had them at different times in my life. My first cat never even made it to her first birthday. She was hit by a car and died. My second cat I found several weeks after he went missing, dead on the side of the road following being hit by a car. This approach, by having a cat curfew, spares people the pain, spares cats
Councillor
and
Svensson,
families
could
the
you
pains
please
that we
wind
went
up?
through, and gives cats longer, safer lives.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Councillor Iwasaki, speaking for?
Speaking against.
Against. Go ahead.
So as a fellow cat owner, I want to start with that we all share, the care and commitment for our pets, and we love the birds and wildlife that make Merri-bek special. The science is clear that roaming domestic cats, not just ferals, are exceptionally effective hunters, especially of our daytime birds. Protecting and bringing back urban bird life is a core goal in our nature plan, and I believe that we can do that while caring for our cats. Yesterday, I circulated references for councillors covering research on owned, not feral cats. The evidence base is strong and consistent. Reasonable people can have different feelings about how to act, but the effectiveness of containment in some form is well established. We've heard from our locally based experts, and it would be a shame to ignore their expert opinion. For anyone who wants to read further, I recommend Barrett, 1997, Van Heetzik, 2010, Ann Lloyd, 2013, Woods, 2003, Baker, 2005, McCreer, 2016, plus broad reviews like Legge et al. 2019 and Loss et al. 2022. I'm happy to provide those to anyone who asks. These works synthesize hundreds of studies and make the case plainly. Australia's wildlife is uniquely vulnerable to cat predation because so many native species didn't evolve with cats. That's why best practice, supported by Melbourne-based urban ecologists, is a 24-hour cat containment policy. I also want to acknowledge that change can be inconvenient. Many households have routines built around letting our cats roam, and those concerns are real, and our job is to make the transition practical and compassionate. Containment isn't just about wildlife, it's about cat welfare. Outdoor cats face higher risks of car strikes, disease, poisoning, fights, getting lost, and they often live much shorter lives. I've felt that personally. I've held my partner's family cat after a car strike as she died. I've helped reunite a local, severely underweight lost cat with its people. And I've been upset as a child by my cat killing a native dove and not being able to help that bird. So the positive path forward is adopting a 24-hour or at least some form of cat containment as evidence-based best practice. And we support those cat owners to succeed. That means education over punishment, grace periods, help with microchipping and registration, guidance on enriching indoor environments, promoting catios and secure yards, and partnerships as much as we can. We can also invest in feral cat control at the same time. This would be a win-win: safer, healthier, happier cats, thriving bird life, and a community that chooses care and responsibility. In 2022, Merri-bek respondents supported this direction by 80%. Tonight, let's back this process with kindness, clear information, and practical support, because looking after our cats and our native wildlife is something we can do together. Voting against a cat curfew in some form ignores the voices of 80% of the community.
Thank you, Councillor Iwasaki. Are there any speakers for? Councillor Politis.
Thank you, Mayor. I have heard the arguments for and against cat curfews, no cat curfew. I've had very impassioned representations on both sides. I've also been reading evidence on both sides. I think we need to be driven by the evidence. I think we need to also learn from the experience of other councils, and I think we're in the beneficial position of being able to learn from other councils. I would be in favour of an amendment to Sue Bolton's motion, and I take on board what you've said, but I think that a suitable compromise to a curfew versus no cat curfew is possibly an overnight one. So I would like to move that amendment, if that is acceptable.
Is there a seconder? The amendment, can we get the amendment? What's the amendment, Councillor Politis?
The amendment is the introduction of a cat curfew from sunset to sunrise.
So that's very different to the current motion. Councillor Bolton, is that?
I'm not. Well, I'll check that it's not agreeable to. Oh. No, the first issue isn't. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Councillor Politis, in my view, that is very different from Councillor Bolton's motion, in which case it becomes a foreshadowed motion. So in that case, Councillor Bolton's motion will be voted on, and in the event that that fails, your foreshadowed motion would come next. Okay. Oh, you had foreshadowed? Yes. Okay. Yes. So it will take turn after Councillor Svensson's. Councillor Abood?
Yeah, can I propose that we put Councillor Bolton's amended motion to the vote?
I think that would be wise to make it quite clear and succinct.
Can I get right of reply?
Yes, please close.
There are other people who've indicated a desire to speak.
Yeah, I want to speak.
And you're all speaking against. Okay, I will allow the debate, but please don't repeat what other speakers have previously said, because you are all speaking against at this point. And then Councillor Bolton to close the debate. Councillor Irvin, and then Councillor Pulford. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. So this decision before us tonight is to take the draft Domestic Animal Management Plan, DAMP for short, to public exhibition, which means that over 4 weeks, our community can share feedback to help finalise this policy. I want to emphasise, we're not endorsing the final policy tonight, we're inviting the community to help shape it. Obviously, we're discussing the 24-hour cat containment policy, which is a big item in the draft DAMP as it's currently written. And this isn't the first time that we've engaged with the community on this issue. The development of this draft was informed by a survey with 74% support for 24-hour cat containment. And in 2022, another survey on this issue found 82% support for full or overnight containment, with 24 hours being the most popular option. Of course, not everyone agrees. Some residents have raised concerns about how containment might affect their pets, or concerns about their inability to cat-proof their homes. That's exactly why we're taking this to public engagement, to hear those voices and make sure that the final policy reflects a balanced approach that mitigates those concerns. I'm deeply uncomfortable with the idea that as councillors, we would look at previous engagement results, hear what the community is telling us, and choose to put our fingers in our ears and refuse to keep listening and learning. I cannot, in good conscience, ignore what our community has told us, loudly and clearly. To do so would be to turn our backs on the very people we were elected to represent. Good decision-making is built on 2 pillars: evidence and community support. Without both, implementation is impossible. Cat containment is an issue where we have both evidence and community support. We have seen this support in previous engagement on the issue, and we have seen the evidence on the benefits of cat containment on cat health, owner welfare, and on the impacts to wildlife. For those who have concerns about this evidence, we have the opportunity to participate in specific research that will show the impact of this policy on wildlife in Merri-bek. Just as I think it is irresponsible to make a decision without listening to the community, I think it is equally as irresponsible to ignore existing evidence and reject the opportunity for further research that could strengthen our understanding. I support taking the draft DAMP to community engagement with the inclusion of cat containment. I think other measures to reduce unowned cat populations can be done alongside cat containment. I will not be supporting this alternative motion.
Thank you, Councillor Irvin. Councillor Pulford.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be quick just to say the motion before us only really looks at one part of the issue. A cat curfew tries to solve the problem of cats killing native wildlife and helping to protect biodiversity in our area. And by focusing only on one part of the population of cats and completely kind of ignoring domestic population of cats, we're only partly addressing the issue. When it comes to climate change, we don't just focus on energy, we look at all sectors of the economy, energy, transport, buildings, etc. or we do climate mitigation and climate adaptation. So I'd be concerned if this motion is supported that's currently before us, because it only seeks to address part of the issue while ignoring the majority of the issue, which is the huge number of domestic cats that we have in Merri-bek. I'd also just like to express my concerns if a majority of councillors support this motion before us. I'd be concerned on our decision-making process being against evidence, being against broad community consultation in favour for a number of emails we've received. I don't think that's a good way to make decisions. I think we should show leadership, and we're in our positions. We've been entrusted with this position in our community, and we need to make sure we don't just listen to the small, loud voices. We take into account a lot of things in our decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pulford. Councillor Bolton, do you wish to close the debate?
Yeah, would like to close the debate. I've heard the comments raised by councillors about the community support for cat curfews, but I had a look at the survey, and I think some people did very considered, responses in support of or against the cat curfew. But I also think there are a lot of people who just assume that a cat curfew is the solution. I used to be one of those people without really thinking about it. Do people really know how it would be implemented? There's a lot of information that was missing in that consultation, that I think if people had been aware of, do people know that council won't be having a animal officer on every street available all the time? Do people know that council doesn't roster animal officers on at night? My feeling is that the cat curfew is a feel-good, superficial solution, which makes people think, oh, we've done something, but actually we haven't done anything appreciable for wildlife while we have so many unowned and semi-owned cats. And my motion goes further than the officer's recommendation about a more serious program to go also beyond what was done in Banyule to also address the cat colonies. I mean, I think there are parts of Merri-bek where there are cat colonies of unowned and semi-owned cats, and where maybe there's a lot more poverty and there are not necessarily as many complaints because people don't have trust in officials and governments and councils and so forth. And, if we're really to address the issues, we need to be able to seriously reduce those colonies of cats in a humane way. So I feel that the consultation needed a lot more in it, a lot more information available for people in order to be able to make an informed, ticking of the box or clicking of the multiple choice.
Councillor Bolton, it's 2 minutes for the right of reply.
Okay, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Thank you for closing the debate. I'll put Councillor Bolton's motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that lost. We'll now move to Councillor Svensson's foreshadowed motion.
Thank you. So, as I've mentioned before, this is a motion that combines the officer's recommendation with a grant program for low-income residents to help them transition their cats to living indoors or outdoors if they have a suitable place to keep them on their property. I want to say thank you to everyone who's spoken.
Sorry, Councillor Svensson. Sorry.
I need a seconder.
We just wait to get. We're going to get it up on the screen, and you do need a seconder, yeah, which will be Councillor Iwasaki. Is that correct, Ella? That's the right one? Okay. Great, thank you. And Councillor Iwasaki to second.
So I wanted to start by saying a very big thank you to everybody who's spoken tonight. I know there were a lot of residents, and experts who also wanted to speak to the item tonight, but we had such an overwhelming response that we couldn't get through everybody. But what I want to highlight is that it isn't a cats versus wildlife debate. It's about caring for both. A 24-hour cat curfew is a practical, kind and effective way to help keep pet cats safe while protecting the birds, lizards and mammals that make Merri-bek special. Some people have argued that pet cats don't really impact wildlife, that it's just the only issue is stray cats, but that's incorrect. Even well-fed pet cats hunt by instinct both day and night. We've seen studies from the CSIRO, which have summarised over 66 studies prior to that have shown that because of the density of pet cats in urban areas, they kill somewhere between 28 and 52 times more wildlife than stray cats do. And that's not to say pet cats are not as good as hunting at stray cats, but that's because of the density. We have a hell of a lot more pet cats in Merri-bek than we do stray cats. If we ignore this evidence, that leaves an enormous gap in our biodiversity efforts and doesn't reflect what residents are seeing in their own backyards. Critically, we've also heard that our community supports action. This isn't just from consultations within Merri-bek, there's also been studies, Australia-wide and Victoria-wide studies. As mentioned by one of the experts before, we had the Victoria-wide consultation, and Monash also recently undertook an Australia-wide consultation, which showed majority support for 24-hour cat containment. To ensure that I was taking an evidence-based approach when voting tonight, I reached out to animal and wildlife organisations across Australia, all of whom provided their support for the proposal. To provide one example, the Invasive Species Council, when they reviewed our plan, they confirmed that it meets the gold standard. And they know what works. They helped the ACT transition to a territory-wide 24-hour cat curfew. They're currently working with the South Australian Government to bring one in statewide, which has unanimous support from all SA councils. And they're working with Western Australia and New South Wales Government too. This policy isn't anti-cat, it's pro-cat and pro-wildlife. Indoor or outdoor enclosed cats live longer, they suffer fewer injuries and diseases. They live, well, up to 10 years longer than cats that roam. Responsible containment is already expected for dogs and basically all other pets. This brings fairness and clarity to cat ownership. I think we'd find it pretty unusual if people just let their dogs roam the streets. Doing right by pet cats doesn't mean that we can ignore stray and unowned cats. We can't, and we should and must address both. A curfew for owned cats complements humane, evidence-based action on strays, desexing, rehoming, education and targeted compliance. This all comes together to form a complete strategy in our domestic animal management plan.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Thank you. Councillor Iwasaki.
I gave a bit of a longer response a moment ago, so I'll just give a briefer one. And just note that a 24-hour cat curfew is evidence-based, morally and ethically the responsible option. In 2022 is also the option supported by a majority of respondents in Merri-bek. I would guess for those exact same reasons.
Thank you, Councillor Iwasaki. Councillor Aboud.
Yeah, I'd like to, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge my privilege because I spend a fair bit of time fighting about dogs and cats. So what a privilege, right? This is as tough as it's getting. And anybody who believed Beyonce when she said girls rule the world, cats obviously rule the world. That's not, girls don't rule anything compared to cats. I can't support a 24-hour curfew and I can't support no curfew, so I'm waiting for the amount of curfew I can support.
Thank you, Councillor Aboud. Are there any further speakers? No, if there's no further speakers, I'll put Councillor Svensson's foreshadowed motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that lost. We'll now move to Councillor Politis.
Can we get a division on that, please?
Yep, certainly. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And we have Councillor Svensson Councillor Pulford, Councillor Irvin, Councillor Iwasaki. All those against, Councillor Yildiz, Councillor Miles, Councillor Politis, Councillor Davidson, Councillor Abood, Councillor Bolton, Councillor Theodosis. Thank you. We'll now move to Councillor Politis's foreshadowed motion, and we'll wait to get that up on the screen, and also we'll need a seconder for this. Yep, who is Councillor Abood. Councillor Politis, that's the correct foreshadowed motion that you wish to move?
Yes, that's right, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, please go ahead, Councillor Politis.
We've heard the evidence. We've heard submissions on both sides, and this issue, I think, has been characterised by such high emotion. The only time that I've been able to have, I think, a reasonable discussion with members of the community, and I've had discussions with many members of the community, is when I have been talking about, or when we have been talking about a nighttime curfew. It not only presents a happy medium, but it actually aligns with what some councils, I think, have successfully introduced. So, you know, I think we've heard lots of arguments on both sides. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm very comfortable with a nighttime curfew and putting that out for public view.
Thank you very much, Councillor Politis. Councillor Abood.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge everybody's work on this, including the Director for City Infrastructure, who I had a conversation with early this morning, and also contributions from the community. We've heard a lot of things, and something that resonates for me is that it's very important that we try and control what cats are doing out in the world. And we have environmental credentials here at Council that suggest that we would support work that looks at addressing the situation with which we know, which is that cats, both stray, feral cats, wild cats, and our pet cats, do kill animals. You know, Jack Russells kill lots of lizards as well, but we're talking about cats and we know they're an issue.
Can you bring the mic a bit closer?
Yeah, but it's also been put to me that some cats, and especially rehomed cats already, are likely to be almost impossible to contain for 24 hours. And there could be a chance that we come back and look at this in a few years or whatever, and we extend the curfew time, and that the end goal is a 24-hour curfew. But I think that considering what we know about, well, rather what we don't know about what might happen if we put a 24-hour curfew, and what we do know about if we had no curfew, I think that considering this is a draft going out for consultation, the overnight curfew is a good compromise. I want to really, I guess, express deep gratitude to all of those people, and I know there are lots of you who already have their cats inside 24/7. You know, I also grew up with a lot of cats. Most of them were stray cats that had kittens, and we would keep the kittens. Sometimes the kittens would get stolen, sometimes we'd just keep them and end up with too many cats for a long period of time. But I think that there is still quite a long way to go in terms of helping people to understand that if you are feeding a cat in a back lane, that's awesome, and it's great that you're getting, you know, the idea that was put to me by former Councillor Connellan. some connection with, you know, something to do each day and something to feel responsible for. But I think we have a bit of a piece of education that we need to delve into that helps people to understand the impact of that cat for the rest of the time that it's existing in the back lane or wherever it is. I think that the 12-hour curfew is something that strikes a compromise.
Thank you, Councillor Abu. Are there any speakers? Councillor Svensson?
I'd like to move an amendment if it's if the mover and seconder agree to amend in the support for low-income residents that I've put in my alternative motion. So this would provide support for people on low incomes to transition their cats to living indoors, whether that's looking at things like enrichment, containing them on their property, or putting out areas outside like a catio. So I think that that's something that could still be incredibly valuable no matter how long this period of cat containment is throughout the day.
Is that something that's agreeable to the mover?
I'm agreeable to support people to transition, but without some of those details, because I think some of those initiatives are incredibly costly and they haven't been costed, particularly cat enclosures and that sort of thing. But so I would be very supportive of putting in support measures for people on low incomes.
So we'll need to get the wording for
Yeah.
that. And is that agreeable to the seconder?
My wording doesn't specify what the support looks like.
Could we get the wording up on the screen? Oh, is that it there? Referral to the 2026-2027 budget process, a grant program to assist low-income residents to transition their cats to being indoor cats.
Yep, those words are agreeable to me.
Yeah. The concern I have with this is the number of things we have referred to the budget process. So I have a suggestion that might be to do with the words that Councillor Bolton had along the same lines, which is sort of a bit more about helping people to find ways to create catios or whatever without the budget implications. We all know in the community that there's access to lots of different stuff through hard rubbish rescue and
Unfortunately, Councillor Bridge, you can't move an amendment to your own motion, but I know that Councillor Svensson has heard that. Is that something that you would be agreeable to changing?
No, just because one of the biggest barriers we heard to implementing a curfew was that people were concerned about low-income residents and their ability to keep their cats indoors. That's going to apply at nighttime as well. And I think if we're looking at any form of curfew, we need to have practical support for those residents to make it possible.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. So you're not agreeable to that. So in that case, we'll need to have yours as a amendment, and we'll need a seconder.
And apologies, Mayor. Councillor Svensson, rather than it saying to transition their cats to indoors, perhaps transition their cats to containment, given that this is currently a motion for an overnight curfew only.
This is just referring to the budget, yes?
Yeah, just referring to the budget, so that's fine.
Yep, so we can change that wording. And I saw Councillor Pulford's hand up. Councillor Pulford, is that you wanting to second Councillor Svensson's amendment? Okay, great. Councillor Svensson, do you wish to speak to that further?
I think I've spoken previously to my support for cat containment, but also my support for doing that in a humane way that's humane for both cats and owners. And I think in order to help transition, we need to support owners, and this does that.
Okay. Councillor Pulford, do you wish to speak to the amendment?
This is just referring to the budget process, so I'm not sure why it wasn't agreeable in the first place, but yeah, happy to support this amendment.
Okay. Councillor Iwasaki.
I'd just like to ask if an amendment could be included as well, just that referred to the ability to have consultation on a 24-hour cat curfew, as we originally had majority support for that.
So we're just voting on one amendment at a time. We'll deal with this amendment.
Okay.
Now, Are there any further speakers to the amendment? Councillor Abood.
Those words are different to the words that were proposed when I suggested, like, when Councillor Svensson put the amendment, it was slightly different. Those words, I have no problem with those words because of the bit where it says, undertake design of a possible grant program is not the same as, for me as just referring it to the budget. I know it says put forward a consideration in the budget, but I think that designing a possible grant program is different to just asking the budget for more money. So I'm happy to, and especially because the mover was happy with that amendment, I'm happy to accept that amendment.
Okay. In which case, that will become part of the substantive. So there's no further debate on that particular point, or we can go back and debate the entirety of the proposal by Councillor Politis. Are there any people who wish to speak to this further? Councillor Bolt. No. That's been incorporated into the substantive. Yes. Councillor Bolton.
Motion?
Correct.
Obviously, a nighttime curfew will be easier for people to implement than a 24-hour curfew. I'm still going to vote against it. I can understand the motivations of Councillor Politis to have a more middle position, but I also I think some of the issues still exist, and I am all in favour of a full-on education program and also this grant program to help low-income residents to transition to having their cats more indoors, or especially overnight. But I think we get the best uptake when it is a voluntary program as opposed to a mandatory penalising kind of program. I also dispute the figures about the number of pet cats compared to the number of stray cats, because when I was preparing my alternative motion by the advice I got from council officers is there's no information, it's not possible to count the number of stray cats. So I don't actually know where that information came from. I mean, I certainly do accept that, domestic cats do kill. I mean, I'm not naive about that. In fact, of the people in the room, I seem to be the one who's had the least pet cats in my life. Only, one and one stray wandered in. But I just think I still feel the same arguments that the most effective thing for wildlife, and I probably am most motivated by wildlife, is to substantially reduce the number of unowned and semi-owned cats. And I think for people to adopt semi-owned cat or adopt cats that they're feeding, there are some people who might adopt fairly easily, but other people take a lot of persuasion, and I think a curfew is one more barrier in front of that helps dissuade people from actually adopting cats that they're feeding.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Pulford.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'll support this motion as it is doing a 12-hour containment. And as is clear, I would have preferred a 24-hour containment. I think there's problems with only having a 12-hour. It's harder to communicate. It's harder to explain. If somebody has their cat roaming during the day, they can't just press the buzzer and get the cat to return in time. So there's going to be logistical difficulties for cat owners to do it this way. And I think it adds difficulties for council in terms of enforcement and monitoring. But I think this is better than no containment at all. And I just, as this is sending out to community consultation, I encourage residents who may have thought that council was going to support a 24-hour curfew tonight, given it was the officer recommendation. If they would still prefer to see a 24-hour curfew, please do participate in the engagement process. Make your voices heard loud and clear to councillors, and your views will be considered through the rest of the process as the DAMP comes back to us for final adoption later this year.
Thank you, Councillor Pulford. Are there any, Councillor Iwasaki?
I just want to note that this is a political step. This is not based on best practice. Bird life is killed during the day, not at night. Our native birds are especially vulnerable. They did not evolve with cats. Cats were from Europe and Asia. They came with the colonists. This ignores the evidence. It ignores the experts who've spoken tonight. It will kill native wildlife that didn't need to be killed, and it harms domestic cats. It also ignores the will of a majority of respondents who engage with the process. I would encourage all of those who engaged before to make your voices heard again, because we're having a hard time listening.
Are there any further speakers? No. If there's no further speakers, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried with Councillor, and those against, and Councillor Bolton voting against. Oh, okay, let's do that again. All those in favour? I declare that carried, and sorry, all those against, Councillor Bolton and Councillor Iwasaki to vote against. I declare that carried. We'll now move on to 7.4, Integrated Water Management Action Plan 2025 to 2030 for adoption. Is there a councillor who wishes to move this report? Councillor Aboud, and a seconder. Councillor Irvin. Thank you, Councillor Aboud.
Oh, this is not a draft. This is not a draft. This is the plan. This is being adopted, and it's something that is really special to me because my ward has much creek through it. Most of the Merri runs through it and the Edgars Creek runs along it. And, we consider that we're the Warrandyte of Merri-bek, and we love all of the partners and would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung, and especially for teaching us how important the waterways are in Indigenous culture and helping us to learn that stuff. We love all of the local planters who help to tend the creeks and the creek environs, and that's not just the creek that runs through my ward, but also the other creek. So, and the work that is being done over there, which is great. I really am in awe all of the time of the Merri Creek Management Committee and the Friends of the Creeks, all of the creeks, because I think that it's only in my lifetime that we've really understood how important these open spaces are and how important the creek and the creek environs are, and especially when we're considering the stuff that does define us here, which is to do with our environment and the open spaces that we are trying to nurture and enjoy. So I'm really proud of this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Aboud. Councillor Irvin?
Yes, I just want to thank everyone who provided feedback on the draft Integrated Water Management Action Plan. And Council's gone through a process of reviewing that feedback, and there's a whole list of where changes have been incorporated into the final policy, which is how the process works and how it will work for other engagement as well. And this is a really important action plan for me. The Australian landscape is hugely impacted by water. We either have flooding when there's too much of it or drought when there's too little. And historic approaches to managing flooding have, over time, been shown to cause more problems than they solve. For example, concrete drains that were designed to move floodwaters quickly are less effective than a natural absorbent waterway that slows down flows and gives the land time to absorb excess water. The vision of this Integrated Water Management Action Plan is to become a water-sensitive city, where we care for our waterways and make the most of our water resources. I know firsthand how important our creeks are to the community and how hard people work to maintain and improve the natural environment around them. This action plan is a really great document for summarising some of our achievements from the previous action plan, including incredible water savings and nitrogen removal from stormwater harvesting systems, the results of innovative trials of permeable pavements, and one of my favourite recent projects of new tree pits and rain gardens on Eddy Street in Brunswick East. And of course, one of our major projects, stage 1 of the rehabilitation of the Moonee Ponds Creek through the Chain of Ponds collaboration. If you hadn't had a chance to visit this renaturalised section of the creek in Oak Park, I highly recommend it. The policy before us tonight also has a new set of actions, including support for water-sensitive urban design research, continuing to revitalise and naturalise our waterways, continuing to implement stormwater harvesting schemes, and seeking funding to deliver new wetlands. Those are just a few examples. I want to thank the Integrated Water Management team for the work they've put into this action plan and into listening to the community and incorporating feedback. I'm really excited to see these actions become reality over the next 4 years.
Thank you, Councillor Irvin. Are there any further speakers on this item? No. If there's no further speakers, I'll put the report to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. I will just, sorry, Councillor Theodosis, I didn't see your hand. Was that in favour? Yes, great. I declare that carried. We'll move on to 7.5, 2026 State Election Advocacy Priorities. Councillor Bolton is on her feet, and Councillor
I've got a
Iwasaki
slightly different, slight alteration to this motion. And it is to add an extra point that when advocating on road safety, include consideration of projects which address roads with high rates of serious injuries and fatalities, roads with high rates of vulnerable road users being seriously injured or killed, safe routes to schools and shops, equity, which is higher weighting for areas that have received less road safety attention in the past, and include in the road safety projects for advocacy, in addition to the projects outlined in the officer report, a project for speed on green traffic lights and red turning arrows on the most dangerous Sydney Road intersections north of Bell Street in Coburg North. And if I get a second, I'll explain why I've added the extra point.
Councillor Iwasaki to second. Thank you.
So the reason I added the extra point is because I certainly agree with all of the proposals officers are putting forward in terms of roads safety, all of those streets, Murray Road, Moreland Road, Bell Street Bridge. But there are some overlooked areas, and there are parts of Merri-bek where there's less likely to be community groups that are formed. And I think it is important that we have an approach where we're able to take up advocacy around roads which are incredibly dangerous, but where the local residents might not be confident enough, might not have the time to engage in community campaigns, or might not have the resources to do that. So we need a basis to take up these roads. And I mentioned one earlier tonight, the intersection of Bakers Road and Sydney Road, and also actually the residents in that area also hoping to get a speed reduction from 60 to 50 kilometres an hour in that stretch of road from Bell Street to the Western Ring Road. So yeah, that was just my addition, because I'm just worried that where there's no community campaigns or weaker community campaigns, because people aren't as resourced, that they might get left out. Apart from that, I think there's a lot of great projects, recommended for state election advocacy, and this is because the state elections are next year. Council needs to start advocating now if we're to persuade parties to commit to projects like duplicating the Upfield railway line, improving bus networks, handing the land of the Ballot Maroop site over to the Wurundjeri for a First Nations cultural centre, and various sporting projects and so forth. So I'd like to commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Iwasaki.
I'll just add that, yeah, a lot of these are really important priorities that have taken a long time to even get looked at, and be looking forward to advocating for the next election.
Thank you, Councillor Iwasaki. Any further speakers? Councillor Svensson.
I'll just quickly say that if you've ever contacted council and we've responded with, unfortunately, we can't help because that's a state issue, we are still trying to help in other ways. And this is what we do. This is core business that we actively lobby other levels of government to make the change that unfortunately we're not able to make change in local government.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Councillor Aboud.
I want to draw people's attention to the very first item on the advocacy list, which is the Upfield Rail Corridor, which is something that this council has been advocating for with the state since last time I was a councillor, which was quite a long time ago. So I don't want you to get your hopes up about what advocacy can actually deliver. There's been a couple of school buildings that were won during advocacy campaigns. Both of them are not built. But yeah, good on us.
Thank you, Councillor Aboud. Councillor Politis.
I note Councillor Aboud's comments, but I think at a time when councils are expected to do a lot more with actually less, I think it is critically important that councils continue their advocacy role to the other levels of government, and I actually have quite an optimistic view of what can be achieved.
Thank you, Councillor Politis. If there's no further speakers, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Next up, we have 7.6, naming part of the laneway between 217 and 219 Elizabeth Street, Coburg North. And this is Councillor Politis had her hand up, and Councillor Aboud. Thanks. Go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. I'm delighted to be supporting this one. So the Castorian community settled in the area and set up their club in, I think, 1968 and have been very, very active ever since. They open up to the community beyond their own Castorian community. Every Sunday they open the doors at about 11 o'clock and they feed members of the community, lonely members, older members, vulnerable members. So they do an incredible community service. They've contributed significantly to the area. They actively participate in lots of council events, and I think it's only fitting that an unnamed lane where their facility is based is named after their region of Greece. So I'm very pleased to be endorsing this one.
Thank you very much, Councillor Politis. Councillor Aboud.
Yeah, I was very keen to second this because it's in my ward, but I think everybody knows it's been Castoria Lane longer than right now anyhow, and it's already known as Castoria Lane to the people who use it, so it's great.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Councillor Aboud. You can close the debate if there's someone speaking against, but Councillor Bolton.
I must admit, I had thought the lane had already been named, but probably because the process to name a lane is quite tedious with a lot of different steps. I think this, the naming of Castoria Lane, which is right beside the Castoria Association building, is going to be incredibly meaningful because many of the people who are active with the Castoria Association are people who went through an extremely hard time of racism in Australia when they first arrived in Australia, and it was, it was really brought home to me when a lot of people who are pensioners running pensioner clubs came to meet up with me about some change of rules of access to keys, etc., for meetings, that a lot of people felt they were discriminated against. Wasn't council's intention but you could see that people were remembering the incredible discrimination they faced when they first came to Australia. And I think this is the case with people involved in the Custodian Association. It'll be incredibly meaningful for them given what they suffered in the past when they first came to Australia. So I think this will be a really meaningful thing for the custodian community.
Are there any speakers against? No. Councillor Miles?
I'm speaking against, but I'm voting for. Off you go. Helen would like to add something extra, so I'm saying that I'm voting against so she can close the vote, close the debate, but even though I'm going to be voting for it, was technically so she could finish.
Okay.
Is that allowed? This is weird.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry. Is that okay?
Not
really.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Bolton, for your comments. It was quite an oversight on my part, not to mention that. I just wanted to close by saying the reason why people think it had already been named is because I think we've been talking about it for so long, so the custodian community will be delighted. And I just wanted to close by acknowledging all the good work of former Mayor and Councillor Lambros Tapanos on this one.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councillor Place. It's a passionate topic. So let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. We'll now move on to 7.7, Fix Up Amendment, Gateway 1, Authorisation and Exhibition. Is there a councillor who wishes to move this report? Councillor Svensson, thank you. And is there a councillor to second? Councillor Irvin. Thank you, Councillor Irvin. Councillor Svensson.
So this report is basically part of something we do regularly is we go through lots of different items of work that we have to make sure that there's no little mistakes and bits and bobs that we need to tidy up. And this is one of those tidy ups. If you've ever worked in a big organisation, I'm sure there'll be times where you see a document go out and you're like, it's been proofread a couple of times. And then once it's published, you go, damn it, there is a giant spelling error right in the front of the document. So that's why you need to go through and do these occasional reviews and updates. There's nothing massive in the fix-ups, that's why we call it a fix-up amendment, but it's part of a regular process that we undertake.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Councillor Irvin. If there's no further debate on this, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. We now have the summer sporting allocations for 2025-2026. Is there a councillor to move this report? Thank you, Councillor Miles, and a seconder. Councillor Bolton. Thank you, Councillor Miles.
Yeah, I just want to thank the council officers who've put in all this hard work to allocate all the grounds. We've had a few grounds out of action and we've really had a resurgence in cricket lately. So this takes so much time and effort to keep everyone happy. And it's turned out really well because I haven't had any complaints yet. So I think we've done quite well in this.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Bolton. Thank you. Are there any speakers against? No. If there's no further speakers, I'll put this item to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. And I think Councillor Pulford is frozen. Yeah, so do I.
We're laughing because one of our colleagues is frozen on the screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also frozen blowing his nose.
Okay, we'll move on to the 2024-2025 financial statements and performance statements. Is there a councillor who wishes to move this report? Councillor Svensson, thank you, and a seconder. Councillor Iwasaki, thank you.
I'm trying to take over from what Councillor Bood usually does in moving some of the less sexy reports, but very important ones. These are financial statements. It's important when we're working with public money, that we ensure that we're using that money responsibly and that we're financially sustainable moving into the future. Myself and some of my colleagues recently did a course that was all about governance, and one of the things that we focused on in that course was financial literacy. And through that, it's really helped to reinforce why Merri-bek is considered one of the most financially sustainable councils in Victoria. So if you are a finance nerd, recommend taking a look, and it can really help confirm that the council, under the lead of some really impressive staff, is taking good care of your money.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Nothing to add. Are there any further speakers? If there's no further speakers, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. We'll now move on to 7.10, Governance Report, September 2025, Cyclical Report. Is there a councillor to move this report? Councillor Bolton, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Svensson, thank you. Councillor Bolton.
This is just a regular report that comes up at each council meeting with records of minutes and more administrative kind of decisions at council.
Thank you. Councillor Svensson.
Nothing to add.
Councillor Aboud.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to draw attention to the fact that me being the council representative to the Merri Creek Management Committee does not mean I have a conflict of interest in voting about stuff that does concern the creek.
Thank you, Councillor Aboud. Are there any further speakers? No, if there's no further speakers, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. We'll now move on to the Devon Road report. So 7.11, Contract Award RFT 2025-34, Road Reconstruction, Devon Road, Pascoe Vale, View Street to Oak Street. And we have Councillor Theodosis with her hand up. Is there a seconder? Councillor Miles. Thank you, Councillor Theodosis.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is to look at the reconstruction of Devon Road in Pascoe Vale and making a formal offer to the contractor. As the ward councillor for this area, I've had a lot of concerns raised about the quality of the road and its surrounding areas, which is really key in connecting our community, particularly in the residential areas, trying to access Pascoe Vale Road and even getting onto the freeway. The scope of the works includes installation of underground drainage system, associated pits, full depth pavement upgrade, reconstruction of the existing curb and channel, vehicle crossings, footpaths and garden bed installation. So this was also, as part of this design phase, community consultation was carried out just in June this year. This was through letter drop to property owners and residents along the road, and several residents expressed their support for the proposed works. So yeah, really pleased to see it progressing.
Thank you, Councillor Theodosis. Councillor Miles. Are there any further councillors that wish to speak to this item? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. We'll move on to 7.12, Contract Award RFT 2025-18, Moomba Park, New Modular Provision, Design and Construct. Is there a councillor who wishes to move this? Councillor Bolton, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Irvin, thank you. Councillor Bolton.
A new pavilion in this little corner of Fawkner, which is a more isolated area near the creek in the northern part of Fawkner. I think this, especially if there is a level of community access to the facility, in addition to the soccer club that has that ground, I think will be a real benefit to people in Fawkner, especially as there's a lack of venues that people can hire in Fawkner. Not to mention the fact that it'll be really important for the club itself because its current facilities are sort of not very practical, really. It's not a very practical setup, so I think this will be really appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Irvin. If there's no further speakers on this item, I'll put the report to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. We now have Contract Award RFTP 2025-6, Provision of Dry Goods. Is there a councillor who wishes to move this report? Councillor Svensson, thank you, and Councillor Iwasaki to second. Councillor Svensson.
This is our contract to ensure that we can buy the sort of food that you put in your pantry as opposed to your fridge or your freezer. So just one of those regular sort of reports that we do.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Councillor Iwasaki?
No,
No, you can say.
it's a little bit dry.
Very good. Councillor Abood.
Yeah, I just want to draw people's attention to the chemical part of this contract, which is a company called Cleaner Future. Industrial chemicals have come a really long way, and it used to be a scenario where everything that you used in a kitchen to get anything clean was incredibly corrosive and toxic. And so I just want to commend Cleaner Future. I have no direct contact, or I'm not an ambassador for that company or anything, but I just think it's really good that we can use a company that is really endeavoured to get cleaner, dirty chemicals, if that makes sense. So I'm really glad to see this company on the list.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Abood. If Councillor... Oh, no, you've... Oh, right, you're already voting. Okay, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Now, this brings us to notices of motion. And the first notice of motion we have this evening is 8.1, Merri-bek term for 2026 Youth Program Parliament. Councillor Bolton.
Yes, this is a motion that someone, Gabrielle, spoke to earlier in the discussion. This is a proposal for Merri-bek to sponsor a team in the 2026 Victoria Youth Parliament to a maximum value of $5,000. And then the cost of putting in a team is a little bit more than that. So there's a view that we can raise that extra money in some other way. Notices of motion are limited to a $5,000 cap. This year, there was a really great youth parliament. With
Can I just get the seconder?
oh yes, sorry, I forgot.
Councillor Svensson. No, keep going.
And probably as a young person, I probably wouldn't have necessarily been interested in something like this, but talking to young people who participated, they got a huge amount out of it. And as we heard Gabrielle, it wasn't until he moved outside of Merri-bek that he even heard about this program. There were certainly some students involved in John Faulkner Secondary College who were part of this program, mainly because the school sponsored them. But apparently Merri-bek used to sponsor teams many years ago, and this year about 10 council-sponsored teams. So this is really to give an opportunity to more young people in Merri-bek to find out about the program and volunteer to be part of it if they want to. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Svensson.
I think this is an excellent proposal and I'm really happy to support it. I think we need more young people who are involved in politics so that they can have a say in the decisions that affect their futures. And we know that young people are super underrepresented at all levels of government, both in terms of feeding into the decisions that government makes, but also in terms of elected representatives. And when you think about elected representatives, the worst, at least in Victoria, is actually local government when it comes to youth representation. From the recent VLGA census, they found that only 1% of councillors are aged under 30, with 69% of councillors being aged over 50. So a clear need for more young people to be getting involved in politics. We're actually one of the pretty unusual councils in Victoria because we've got a millennial majority. But even then, us millennials aren't actually all that young anymore. So programs like the Youth Parliament help young people to explore and nurture their interest in politics, and I think these are the young people who are going to be our next generation of leaders. So I think it's so fantastic that we have a group of young people in Faulkner called Faulkner's Future who are already ready to go and keenly interested.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Councillor Iwasaki. Oh, no.
Helen.
Sorry?
Helen wanted to say.
Okay, Councillor Politis.
I think anything that encourages the engagement of young people to be involved in a democratic process is fantastic. I think it's wonderful that we've got a team of 6 keen people ready to go. I mean, how can you say no? It's a wonderful initiative, and I'm very, very happy to endorse it.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on this item? Councillor Pulford.
Yeah, look, just to out myself as someone who did NT Youth Parliament 2 years in a row, and I got a lot out of it, and so very happy that this motion's been brought before us. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but
Yes, we can.
because my computer's just shut down again. But yeah, very happy to support this, and thanks to the councillor for bringing it forward.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Pulford. Are there any further speakers on this item? If there's no further speakers, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Next up, we have procurement policy and some minimum wages for disabled people in segregated workplaces. Councillor Bolton.
This is me again.
I'll just call for a seconder, Councillor Bolton. Is there a seconder for Councillor Bolton's notice of motion? If there's no seconder, the notice of motion lapses. We'll move on to 8.3, famine in Gaza.
Okay, that was a bit surprising. Okay, so this is a motion. So couldn't I even read out the motion, the procurement motion, that we just lapsed for want of a seconder?
Councillor Bolton, the motion was in the agenda and councillors have viewed this. So we'll move on to the second motion, 8.3, famine in Gaza.
Okay, so this motion is really a motion to raise the Palestinian flag and to mark the UN recognised International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people.
And I noticed that Councillor Svensson was wanting to second this. Go ahead, Councillor.
Okay. So, I mean, a lot of what I wanted to move around Gaza, I've already moved in 2023 and 2024. But I think there is a need for Merri-bek to raise its voice again, to indicate both its solidarity for people in Gaza who are facing the most horrendous genocide, and also to renew its calls for Australia to impose full sanctions on Israel, including an end to the two-way arms trade, a permanent ceasefire, and also an end to the siege, and to raise the Palestinian flag, and also to organise an event to mark the UN-recognised International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people on the 29th of November. I mean, first when I moved this motion in August, before I was told I wasn't allowed to move it, that seemed like a very long way away. But, you know, Israel keeps on bombing, keeps on implementing a siege, and the world has reacted to the display of, you know, babies dying of malnutrition with their bones sticking out, very similar to Auschwitz and other famines and so forth that have existed throughout the world. But, you know, we didn't need to lose all of these people, because the announcement of a siege in November or October, whenever it was, in 2023, was always going to come to this if Israel wasn't stopped from implementing a siege on Gaza. At the moment, they are destroying as many people and buildings and landmarks as possible in Gaza. Nothing is sacred. Human life is not sacred. And the Palestine movement has had to fight for the right to even be able to talk about what's been going on in Gaza. And that has an incredible effect on Palestinian people, but anyone with links to the region, to actually be told that there's no genocide, there's no suffering, when the suffering is there for all to see. So I think this is an important motion, and you might say the flag is just a symbolic kind of motion, flying of the flag, but I think it is important because this is the most horrendous genocide that we've seen in this century. And, we really have to raise our voices, and we need to put pressure still on the Australian government, which is still refusing to implement a single sanction on Israel. So without sanctions, Israel is going to keep on carrying out its genocide. We know that if the Australian government stops supplying parts for the F-35 bombers, that Israel would not be able to fly those bombers. So Australia
you,
does
Councillor
have a role we can play.
Councillor Svensson.
I just want to start by saying that I'm incredibly sad that we even have to consider this motion. I will keep it short, not because I don't care deeply about this, but because I think that the people who've spoken before me, particularly the two residents who spoke, I think summed it up perfectly. For years now, we've been watching a live stream genocide, including a widespread famine that is now resulting in a quarter of all Palestinians in Gaza being at immediate risk of starvation. For all that time, we've seen hundreds of thousands of Australians taking to the streets and calling on the government to take action. The recent announcement by the federal government that they plan to recognise Palestine shows that this pressure is working, but it doesn't go far enough. We need real action. We have a moral obligation as elected representatives to add our voices to those hundreds of thousands of Australians calling for action, calling on the government to sanction Israel and to end the arms trade. We also have a moral obligation to show solidarity with victims of genocide and occupation, both in Gaza and beyond, as well as an obligation to show solidarity with our own Merri-bek community who are hurting. As a council, we made a mistake taking down the Palestinian flag when only a temporary ceasefire was in place. Let's fix that mistake. I urge all councillors to stand on the right side of history and support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Pulford.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm currently in Rome in Italy, and earlier this week I participated in a march through the streets of Rome with thousands of other people in support of the movement for a free Palestine, and also in support of the brave people from over 40 different countries who are currently sailing towards Gaza with material support and aid for the people of Gaza, given the famine that Israel is currently forcing upon the people of Gaza, as well as the bombing, as well as the destruction, as well as the war. This is truly a global movement for peace. And in the last council term, Merri-bek was a leader in this. We were the first council in Victoria to fly the Palestinian flag to show support and our solidarity for the Palestinian people in Gaza, but also people around the world, and particularly in our community who have friends and family who are personally impacted by Israel's actions on Gaza. I really commend Councillor Bolton for bringing this motion before us. As Councillor Svensson said, the situation in Gaza is only getting worse because of what
Councillor Pulford, you've frozen.
is only continuing to grow.
Okay.
And that is having an impact with... Can you hear me still?
Yes, you came back. Yep. Keep going.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
This movement is creating change. We've seen the Australian government change its position multiple times and now is seeking to recognise Palestine as a state. With images of famine, with images of destruction and bombing, with journalists being killed on live TV as they investigate a health site that'd been bombed previously, just moments before. I wonder what it would take for councillors to change their mind. What is your red line, if not now, if not this? I really hope that councillors support this motion tonight. It's well, like we heard from two residents who spoke to the meeting earlier, Of course, flying the flag in Merri-bek won't stop the Israeli government attacking Gaza, but it'll be us showing to our residents that we hear them, we stand with them. It'll be us again adding our voice to the global movement for peace. And a flood comes about from many drops of rain. Let us be one of those drops that are creating the flood, pushing for peace and pushing for an end to the destruction of the people of Gaza and this genocide.
Thank you, Councillor Pulford. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Politis and then Councillor Yildiz.
I've had many representations about this really horrific and very distressing issue. We're all sickened and horrified by what's going on in Palestine. I also know that in my community, many people feel that at the council level, this is not something or not a fight we should be taking on. And it has caused...
I'd ask for the gallery to be quiet when a councillor is speaking, please.
It has caused much division and created much side-taking, shall we say, and caused much aggression in the community. The only time I have felt threatened in my community when I have been campaigning has been, unfortunately, on this issue, on the issue of Palestine, which I very strongly support. But I also hear a very broad and a very diverse community out there that has very different views on it. Perhaps it's through a lack of understanding. I don't know. But I do know that some of these actions will cause much division in a community where we should be focused on cohesion and on peace building and on demonstrating what it is and what it feels like to live peacefully together in this multicultural community. I therefore ask if it would be possible to the mover of the motion to vote separately on each of the points, because there are some points that I can support quite easily, because I do think it's important that we note the distress that's being caused in Merri-bek and in
Politis, you don't need to have approval from the mover or the seconder for that, so that's something that I'm happy to put and that councillors vote separately.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Yildiz, you wish to speak?
Yes, please. Can I just say a few words? Three key things for me: solidarity with a community that's in pain. Many Palestinian Australians and people in our community and their families are deeply affected by the ongoing conflict. Flying the flag can show that Council acknowledges their suffering and stands with them in a humanitarian, not partisan way. Point 2. Human rights and peace. Supporting the flying of the flag doesn't have to mean taking a political side. It can instead represent a call for peace, justice and human rights, universal values that we as a council uphold. Last thing, local impact. Many local residents may have friends and relatives directly affected, and I think many do. A symbolic act like this can help people feel seen, feel heard and supported at a time of crisis, and we stand with you on this.
Are there any further speakers? Councillor Aboud.
I'd like to commend Councillor Politis' bravery on this occasion, and I'd like to extend my deepest sympathies to people who have experienced the deep distress that has been caused as a result of the undeniable atrocities that are being rolled out across Gaza. It's something that I'm really pleased that we don't experience here. I think, it must be quite a thing, and I know this is something that my own in-laws have experienced, to be able to feel safe in a second country when there's absolute chaos and turmoil and the kind of destruction that's happening at the moment in Gaza. But I think that it's really important when we talk about distress that we also consider there are other elements of our community who have experienced here in Australia, across the suburbs, 2 young kids stabbed to death brutally on the way home from a basketball game. And I don't really want to go into this hole, but I think that I'm very pleased to be able to put my vote behind acknowledging the distress that's being caused for Palestinian people over what's happening in Gaza. I'm very concerned about point 2. I won't be supporting it. I was going to sit here quietly and not vote, and I won't be supporting point 3 because I've seen a lot of flags in the last week, and I've seen a lot of fighting with those flags. I've seen those flags at Bondi. I've seen them in the Melbourne CBD. I've seen police stretched to their absolute limit, and it's making no difference whatsoever. And I won't also support point 4 because I'm quite concerned that events...
I'd ask for the gallery to please be quiet.
That events that happen here turn into little battles. And it really worries me that we're going to have little wars on our streets that will make no difference whatsoever. And I lament the fact that we couldn't pull off something that was completely apolitical, like what happened in Sydney, where everybody from every political persuasion walked together across a big bridge and had an impact. And I'm really concerned about the nature of this debate and what it means in terms of the Palestinian issue and the atrocities that are happening at the hands of the Israeli government in Gaza and the way they're being used here. I'm really worried about it. And I do absolutely note the distress that it's causing.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Are there any further speakers? Okay. I will say a few words and then I'll turn to Councillor Bolton to close the debate.
Is there any right of reply as a seconder as well?
No, not for the second, just for the mover. Yep. I want to acknowledge the depth of feeling this issue raises within our community, and the situation in Gaza is undeniably distressing. I also recognise that our community is diverse and not everyone will share the same views or the same expectations of council. In fact, previous motions of this nature have been divisive, not only within the community but also within this chamber. On those occasions, we've also seen tensions rise to the point where safety became a concern for councillors and for council staff. My concern is not to diminish the seriousness of the humanitarian crisis, but to carefully consider what the role of local government should be. Our core responsibilities to provide service, infrastructure and support to our residents. When we move into areas of international policy and foreign affairs, which sit firmly with the federal government, we risk straining our ability to represent and unite our whole community in Merri-bek. So for those reasons, I won't be supporting the majority of this motion. Now, I know Councillor Bolton wished to close the debate, so I'll turn to Councillor Bolton now.
The first point is noting distress within large sections of the Merri-bek community about the famine and destruction and killing in Gaza is really meaningless without action. Because the point is that we need to stop genocide and I mean, all the way back in the 30s and 40s, there would have been discussions along these lines, I imagine, during the Second World War when people were talking about Nazi Germany. Their positions were taken by local councils And during other atrocities like what happened in East Timor, councils all over Australia set up, this is after East Timor won independence, set up little groups in solidarity, working alongside East Timorese villages. So there's a precedent for communities to make a stand. And the only reason this issue is at all divisive in the community is because the rich and powerful have an interest in maintaining the Middle East for economic exploitation. And that's why they're refusing to take any action against Israel. It's not to do with lack of social harmony, but I would say that we have experienced, the Palestinian and Middle Eastern communities have experienced many people in power trying to silence any discussion and any acknowledgement of the scale of what's happening in Gaza. I mean, Israel's openly talking about shipping whoever they don't kill in Gaza off to South Sudan or Somaliland or somewhere. So we do need to make a stand. And I think a UN, just finally on this point, having an event which we could do in collaboration with Darabin Council and organisations supporting Palestinian refugees on the International Day of Solidarity with Palestine would be a really good thing to do and a good sense of solidarity for the community.
I'm just, sorry, I'm just wondering, is it too late for an amendment? It is too late?
Yeah, okay. All right, in that case, I'll put Councillor Bolton's notice of motion to the vote. All those, we're doing it in separate parts, sorry, my apologies. So we'll put point 1 to the vote. All those in favour of point 1. And that is carried unanimously. All those in favour of point 2, it will be point 2 on the screen. So that is point 2. Oh, it's the formatting. That's okay. All those in favour of point 2?
I call for a division.
Yes, hang on. All those against? I declare that carried, and there is a division called for point 2. So all those in favour, put your hand up again. Councillor Yildiz, Councillor Svensson, Councillor Bolton, Councillor Irvin, Councillor Iwasaki, Councillor Kat Theodosis and Councillor Pulford. All those against, Councillor Abood, Councillor Davidson and abstentions as well. The 2 abstentions, they don't need. That was on 2. We have point 3 now. All those in favour? Councillor Yildiz, Councillor Svensson, Councillor Miles, Councillor Bolton, Councillor Irvin, Councillor Iwasaki, Councillor Pulford. All those against? Councillor Abood, Councillor Davidson, and there were some abstentions as well. And point 4, all those in favour? Councillor Yildiz, Councillor Svensson, Councillor Politis, Councillor Bolton, Councillor Irvin, Councillor Iwasaki, Councillor Theodosis and Councillor Pulford. All those against? Councillor Abood, Councillor Davidson, Councillor Miles. I declare that carried. We'll move on to 8.4, support for public housing statement.
Sorry about so many motions, but 2 of them were meant to go to the last council meeting. So this is a, one tick, just getting the motion up. Where is it? Oh, it's on the screen. So basically, how this came about is there are many different organisations within the housing sector which have been signing on to a United Housing Sector Statement. It's not only one organisation, it's a number of organisations, and they're calling on organisations, including councils, to sign on to this with three demands. A, commission and release detailed evaluations of the structural conditions of all towers. This means the public housing towers that are slated for demolition. If and when a strong case is made for demolition, build replacement public housing nearby or elsewhere on the estate first and relocate the tenants when complete. B, end all surplus public land sales and use that land to build more public housing. And 3, introduce inclusionary zoning on private land for mandatory component of public housing.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. And Councillor Svensson to second. Councillor Bolton.
So, I mean, I think this is fairly straightforward. I think I might, I mean, I've spoken a lot about these issues. I certainly support us signing on to this statement because we have passed a number of motions in the past calling for state government surplus land in Merri-bek, such as the abandoned Kangan Batman TAFE sites to be used to build public housing. I think I moved both of those motions, and also a former Greens councillor, James Conlon, also moved similar motions as well around this issue. So I think, you know, we're in the midst of a massive housing crisis, and the market has clearly failed to provide public housing that people can afford to live in, or any kind of housing that people can afford to live in, regardless of whether you're renting or wanting to buy. So I'd like to commend this statement. There will be a massive public meeting called, I think, in one of the big centres in the city of all organisations that have signed on to the statement.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Councillor Svensson.
It'll come as no surprise to everybody that I wholeheartedly support Council signing this statement. I think we need to do everything in our power to pressure the state government to take meaningful action on the housing crisis. And we know that the only truly accessible and genuinely affordable form of housing for those most in need is public housing. This is one of those advocacy priorities that we have that where we don't have the levers ourselves, where we need to advocate to other levels of government, just like we mentioned before on our state advocacy priorities. I've spoken previously about how Victoria has massively invested in public housing for decades. So it's no surprise that we actually have the lowest level of public or social housing investment of any state or territory. But instead of increasing public housing, as is desperately needed in the midst of a housing crisis, the Victorian government is proceeding with its plan to demolish all 44 of our public housing towers, which is displacing thousands of vulnerable residents. The government has also refused to release their business case for demolishing these towers, despite courts asking them to do so, which is especially concerning when you consider the multitude of experts who have provided alternative solutions like retrofitting the towers. When you combine that with the fact that in many cases these sites are being sold off to private developers, something just doesn't add up. As is noted by this statement, if the government wants to proceed with the demolitions, they have to prove that they're necessary. If they want to be seen to be taking action on the housing crisis, they need to stop selling off public housing and land that could be used to build it. They also need to force the developers who profit off of this housing crisis to build mandatory minimums of public housing in their new developments. So I urge anyone who cares about genuine action on the housing crisis to support this motion, which I hope will be everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Councillor Politis.
Look, I'm not going to vote against this motion because it's about receiving a report, but I do want to make some comments about the public housing situation, the demolition of 44 towers. At the beginning of the meeting, I mentioned the fact that the residents in the Barclay Street towers have just been given advice that they're going to get air conditioning put in their buildings, and that building has been refurbished, and there's other investments going on. most of the residents in that building are in their 70s and 80s, and that building itself is not slated for demolition for probably 15, maybe 20 years. So I think when we put out public statements like this, we create fear and anxiety amongst the residents that they're going to be thrown out onto the streets. And some residents have felt great distress at receiving this sort of, this type of news. So I think we've got to be careful about the accuracy of what's going out there and be mindful of the impact that we're having on some of the residents who are in these places, because the demolition of some of these places, which many are at the end of their shelf life, they don't last forever. You know, it really does need to be accurate, and I think we need to be mindful that we're not just creating fear and anxiety. So it's the accuracy of the housing statement that I'm really, really concerned about. No argument with me in respect to the need to increase public housing. I absolutely support that. We all know there's been underinvestment in public housing over a long period of time, which the government is trying to rapidly make up for. But I really don't like the idea of making people who are vulnerable, people who are in public housing situations, feel fearful.
Thank you, Councillor Politis. Are there any further speakers on this motion? No. If there's no further... No one spoke against. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. We'll move on to sweating our streets. Sweating our assets pools. Sorry.
Thank you. I don't need a seconder because I'm withdrawing this notice of motion because it can be included as part of the aquatic strategy, and I think we have more than enough notices of motion.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Aboud. Next up, we have addressing tyre dumping. Councillor Miles. And I'm very happy to second this.
Okay. So we have a huge issue in Glenroy. I'm sure we have it all through Merri-bek, but I see a lot of Glenroy where I live, where we're having a lot of dump tyres being dumped on nature strips in our parks, abandoned. Well, when I say abandoned,
I was like, yeah. Okay.
We're having so many dump tyres, and one of the key things I hear when I speak to people, especially as I represent Glenroy East and Hadfield, and sort of near the Jakarta train station, is people say to me that they're embarrassed to invite their friends over to their house due to the dump rubbish everywhere. And one of the big issues is the dump tyres. Dump tyres cost this council an absolute fortune in removal, not only in the labour, but then actually paying ourselves to get them recycled. The problem is that when you get a tyre, a new tyre from Goodyear or somewhere like that, you pay for the tyre to be recycled. But when one of those companies takes that tyre and then illegally dumps it and the council has to foot the bill, we're paying twice to have that same tyre recycled. It's just, we just can't keep going like this. So in this notice of motion, we're going to write a letter to the Minister asking to bolster the EPA to actually get to do a bit more work around dump tyres. As contrary to what a lot of people actually think, we don't actually have our own police force at Merri-bek, so we can't go around doing detective work finding out who's dumping tyres. That's the EPA's job. So we're going to write a letter to the Minister asking them to get the EPA to do a bit better work around dumping tyres and to introduce some CCTV around trouble areas where tyres are being dumped. Also to keep track of where it's constantly going to help feed that back to try and stop this from happening in the beautiful Merri-bek. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miles. I'd just like to concur with everything Councillor Miles has said. It is a huge problem in Glenroy, and this actively goes towards trying to catch those people that are doing the wrong thing, or those businesses that are doing the wrong thing, by implementing CCTV footage, while also calling on the state government to bolster powers to the EPA to act in this space that's causing so much distress and harm to the local area, we know that if tyres are dumped on private property, it becomes the issue of the property owner. And often that's very costly and very unfortunate for that person. So in sites that we know that there is tyre dumping occurring on council land, we're able to put CCTV cameras there to deter and to catch. So I'm very pleased that we've got this motion coming to council, and I would encourage my colleagues to vote in favour of it. Councillor Bolton, thank you.
Yeah, good work, Councillor Miles, because I've never heard of this Tyre Stewardship Australia. And yeah, hopefully this is a strategy that can work, because dump tyres, as well as causing all the things that Councillor Miles and Councillor Davidson mentioned, also can cause fires. Now, maybe the quantities in Glenroy aren't as big as the big tyre recycling plants, but there have been massive fires at tyre recycling plants in Ararat, but also up near Coolaroo, I think it was, really near Upfield train station, just really horrendous fires. And so there are real danger. I mean, I've seen them all over Glenroy and, all sorts of corners. And it does link in with the problem of also companies dumping asbestos waste wherever they can find, because they don't want to pay fees, and other sorts of toxic materials as well. But anyway, this is a really good idea to try. A lot of other things have been tried and haven't really worked. So hopefully this is going to work.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Yildiz.
I've probably raised about, I reckon, 8 or 9 CRSs about this issue. So I think it's great that Councillor Miles and Councillor Davidson, you guys have been, I guess, spearheading this. About time that we get a motion like this. And it's a concern not just in Glenroy, it's happening all over. So I commend you both.
Are there any further speakers? If there's no further speakers, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. We'll now move on to 8.7. That's protecting the right to protest. Councillor Svensson to move and Councillor Bolton to second.
The 8-hour workday, the 5-hour work week, interracial marriage, same-sex marriage, women's right to vote, First Nations people's right to vote and actually be recognised as people, equal pay, anti-discrimination laws, ending conscription, access to reproductive health care. These are just some of the many rights and protections that were won through protest. They're proof that protest is an essential part of making our democracy work. But right now, the right to protest safely in Victoria is at risk. The Victorian government has proposed new restrictions, bans on face coverings, new powers to seize so-called attachment devices, and limits on protests near places of worship. Even with some recent softening, the direction of travel is clear. These are exactly the kinds of broad powers that human rights experts warn against. At the same time, the City of Melbourne has voted to review how protests are managed in the CBD and has indicated their support for restrictions. Any shift towards a permission or registration model would undermine our proud, rights-based approach that keeps our city vibrant and open. And here's a really crucial point. Restricting the right to protest doesn't stop people protesting. It just makes it less safe. When governments push people into unauthorised or more tightly policed spaces, protests still happen, but with more confrontation risk and less of the usual planning and liaison that keeps everybody, protesters, bystanders and police safe. UN guidance is explicit. States must facilitate assemblies, including spontaneous ones, and avoid measures that deter participation. This is how you protect both rights and safety. New South Wales is a cautionary tale. After rushing through harsh anti-protest laws in 2022, one of the offences which was later found partly invalid for breaching the implied freedom of political communication, police increasingly sought court bans on rallies, yet the protests continued. What we saw instead was escalation and heavier tactics. mass arrests and allegations of heavy-handed policing in November of 2023, and in this winter, a Sydney protester, Hannah Thomas, suffered a severe eye injury during an arrest. The Department of Public Prosecutions has now dropped all charges against her. This is exactly what happens when the default shifts from facilitation to suppression. Community anger doesn't disappear, risk just goes up. None of this denies the need to keep people safe, protect access to essential services, or to support small businesses. Our government can work with protesters to ensure safe management of demonstrations while standing firm on civil liberties. We must uphold the principle that inconvenience is not violence and that temporary disruption is sometimes the price of democratic accountability. So tonight I'm asking for Council to take a clear stand, reaffirm the right to protest, write to the Premier, Attorney General, Police Minister and City of Melbourne, raising our concerns and requesting a public commitment to protect the right to protest.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Councillor Bolton. Councillor Iwasaki. Oh, sorry, that's right. We do need a extension of time. Councillor Abood to move for another 30 minutes. Councillor Miles to second. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Bolton. No, you wanted to reserve your right. Councillor Iwasaki. Yes.
I guess I'll just say something that I think a lot of people don't really know about me, but over 10 years ago, I was in Zuccotti Park with Occupy Wall Street, and in Boston with Occupy Boston. I was in the tents, I was in the marches, and I was there when those camps were swept up in the cold in winter, and in the fight against what felt like the billionaires versus the people. It felt like the people lost. And today, what's happening in the US, it reinforces that we can't let the right for protest take one step back, because it can happen here. And anything that we can do to show our solidarity with everybody across the world who is having their rights taken away needs to be done.
Thank you, Councillor Iwasaki. Councillor Miles?
I feel very torn about this because I've been involved, I mean, I'm sure you won't be surprised, I've been involved in protests around animal rights and stuff like that. I agree that it needs to be a right to peacefully protest. My concern is that the right to protest, we can't just, it's not just going to be limited to the people who we agree with. And the problem with, by making right to protest, that means right to protest for anyone from, you know, Nazis, from all sorts of extremist groups can come to the street and have the right to protest, the same as people who are protesting for ending horse racing or something like that. They have the exact same rights. And that's where my concerns come in, is that just because it's not just going to be the people we agree with. So I have real concerns that this will sort of open. I mean, we've seen on the weekend, we saw on the weekend, and I spoke to a friend and you know, I felt sorry for Yella that someone who was completely opposite to you was sort of saying something slightly similar, and I felt sorry because I knew exactly where you're coming from, is absolute best intent. But it's sort of, we've got to be so careful that we could be opening up our streets for all kinds of opinions, not just the ones we agree with. So I agree with you, but I also have massive concerns, so I'll be abstaining from this vote.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Politis.
Yeah, look, when I saw this, I thought protecting the right to protest, yeah, fantastic. And then I read it, and my concern is that we don't know what these restrictions are yet. You know, of course, I believe in the right to protest. I believe in democracy. Here in Merri-bek, we've got a gallery named after Cunahan Gallery. I mean, he stood up for the right to free speech. So we have a long, proud history in this community that we want to uphold. But my concern is that we don't know what the restrictions are, and we don't have the details, so that writing to the Premier and the Attorney General and the Minister for Police, I think may be premature without knowing what that detail is. I would be happy to vote for some of these points, if we can vote on these points separately. Yep. If we can do that, that would be that would be great. And I think I made all my points. I think I agree with the state having a responsibility to facilitate assembly, and I actually think that that is what the government is trying to do, but I just think that we need to understand the detail of these restrictions. Otherwise, I mean, what are we saying? Oh, geez, poor Nazis.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Politis. Councillor Abood.
Yeah, I'm definitely supportive of this motion that talks about protecting the right to protest. But I want to tell a story about my childhood where I was brought up in a single-parent family by a radical feminist who basically protested against everything. And she tells a great story about protesting about the amalgamation of the Melbourne State College into Melbourne Uni. And we trotted out with our Save the Griffin, you know, paraphernalia, and we talked about how important it was to save Melbourne State College from being integrated into Melbourne Uni. But she also admitted sometime later that she actually didn't mind that Melbourne State College was integrated into Melbourne Uni because it meant that she had a degree from Melbourne Uni, not Melbourne State College, which carried a large degree of integrity and more so than the Melbourne State College that she studied at. And I continued to go to protests with her many times a year, any time there was anything to protest, whether it was the Eastern Freeway being built or whatever else it was. I was dragged along and went because that's what I was trained to do. And I kept on going to protests, and the most memorable experience I had on my own going to a protest was when the French were bombing Mururoa Atoll. And I remember traipsing into town and walking past the place of my employment where lots of people were sitting out the front drinking cafe latte, and I was saying, aren't you guys coming into the rally? And some of you will know that it's been quite some time since I've been to any rallies, and that's because rallies have changed. And now rallies are about political posturing in a lot of cases, and all of the time, and lots of rallies I've ever been to, don't actually get the outcome that was desired or educate anyone. What they do is they alienate people. And like I said, I will absolutely support the right to protest because I think it's important. But it's not lost on me that notices have gone up in my neighbourhood that are protesting against Nazis in a community that has no Nazis. And I am also highly aware that the communities in Merri-bek that we want to ensure are able to protest don't include Nazis. But Nazis also will have a right to protest. And that is the bit that concerns me, because the idea of protests have become something that almost looks like a war, and that really worries me. Peace marches don't exist anymore, and I wish they did.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Irvin and then Councillor Bolton.
Yes, I just wanted to talk about the fact that Merri-bek has a long and proud history of activism, including protest. And as Councillor Politis referred to earlier, when I attended the recent Brunswick Community History Group meeting on the history of Sydney Road, they had a few great examples of how that road has been used in protest, including Noel Counihan's 1933 demonstration to fight for free speech. And then more recently in 2013, we've seen tens of thousands of people take to Sydney Road to honour Jill Meagher and others impacted by men's violence against women. We still see regular rallies and marches on the main thoroughfare through our municipality for accessible transport and in solidarity with Palestinians. Beyond our council boundaries, protests have been one of the core ways to further progressive social action. There is virtually no major social change that hasn't come about due to protests, as Councillor Svensson has listed. The Human Rights Law Centre says protest is particularly important for those whose interests are often ignored by our formal political system. So the move to restrict the right to protests is concerning to me. Allowing only protests that those in power approve of or agree with defeats the purpose of protesting in the first place. This is a major erosion of our fundamental democratic rights. So I support this motion to write to the state government and the City of Melbourne to express concern about limiting the right to protest.
Thank you, Councillor Irvin. Are there any other speakers before I turn to Councillor Bolton? Oh, sorry. That's right. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Bolton.
Firstly, political protest and the right to political protest does have to be a right for all. And I actually don't believe, including people who I don't agree with, and I also think you don't defeat the Nazis. Well, the Nazis will march regardless of whether it's legal or not legal, basically. You're not going to control it. Like even the banning of the Nazi symbol, the swastika, the far-right groups and Nazi groups have just simply adopted slight variations and so forth. So they've adopted new versions of the swastika, and even they've, commandeered, sort of innocuous symbols as being symbols of the far right. So I don't think you defeat them through restricting the right to protest. I think if you think like Councillor Irvin described some of the protests, Reclaim the Night, Sydney Road, Noel Counihan, he was arrested and put in Pentridge Prison for speaking. He locked himself in a cage to try and stop the cops getting at him, but then he was put in Pentridge Prison as a 16-year-old or 17-year-old. But I also think it's actually quite, I would say the Palestine protests, the weekly Palestine protests, have been the most socially inclusive protests, bringing people of a very wide range of backgrounds, from very conservative religious to queer rights activists to people from all sorts of different cultures, language backgrounds, and so forth. I'd say these are examples of social inclusion. I actually find it offensive to say that rallies are about political posturing. Of course, you can't speak to the motivations of every single person in a rally, and there may well be some people who are there as a political posture. I don't know exactly what that means. But I think the vast majority of people who attend rallies don't go there for the hell of it. They go there because they're concerned about a particular issue. And a lot of people would prefer to be doing something else rather than having to protest. But the need to protest is many and varied, from trying to stop a company putting a bulldozer through a local park or council or state government in the case of Gandolfo Gardens, or about an international solidarity issue. Like, it's the most natural urge for people to come together. There have been Nepalese protests recently, vigils and so forth. And I think it would be disastrous if we went in the direction of New South Wales, where you have to have a permit to protest. In Queensland, the state government banned, in my growing up, banned street marches, and it was a right we had to win.
Bolton,
So I think it's a right we should not give up, and so I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Svensson.
I will keep this a bit briefer, but I completely agree with what Sue said, that if you restrict the right to protest, that is not going to stop Nazis from protesting. Of course, I don't agree with Nazis, but Nazis have made it very clear, the very ones who were at the rally on the weekend, they made it very clear that they do not care about whether what they do is legal. The siege that they undertook on Camp Sovereignty following the march makes that very clear. They assaulted various First Nations people. They do not care about whether what they do is legal or not. The leader, one of the people who set up the rally, is now, I believe, in prison because of his actions when it came to the siege on Camp Sovereignty. I hope that makes it clear that if you restrict the right to protest, you are not going to stop far-right extremism. If you care about ending far-right extremism, put pressure on the government to actually adopt the recommendations that came from its own inquiry into extremism in Victoria. The government has refused to adopt all of those recommendations that address far-right extremism. Restricting the right to protest will not stop Nazis, but it will stop many well-meaning people from being able to protest safely.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Now, we will vote on each item separately. So for point number 1, I'll put that to the vote. I'll read that out. Notes with concern the state government's proposed changes to protest laws in Victoria and the City of Melbourne's proposal to restrict protesting in the CBD, which risks undermining the long-standing democratic right to protest. All those in favour? All those against? Yep, I think there's a little bit of delay for Adam, so I'll take that as in favour. And all those against? And all those abstaining? Yep, Councillor Yildiz and Councillor Miles to abstain. That's carried. Point 2, affirms that protest and peaceful assembly are fundamental democratic rights essential to community organisations, grassroots movements and the ability of people to raise their voices on issues affecting them. All those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? I declare that carried. Recognises that communities in Merri-bek, including workers, students, First Nations people, young people and LGBTIQA+ community and multicultural groups have historically relied upon peaceful protest to secure important social, environmental, political reforms. All those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? Expresses concern that restrictions on protests risk silencing vulnerable communities, narrowing civic participation and criminalising people seeking to advocate for change. All those in favour? All those against? And all those abstaining?
And can I call for a division on this point?
Yep. All those in favour? Oh, so that's Ella, so Councillor Svensson, Councillor Davidson, Councillor Abood, Councillor Bolton, Councillor Irvin, Councillor Iwasaki, Councillor Pulford, Councillor Theodosis. All those against? Councillor Politis. All those abstaining? Councillor Yildiz and Councillor Miles. Okay. Point 5, writes to the Premier, the Attorney-General, the Minister for Police and the City of Melbourne reaffirming the importance of protest as a democratic right, requesting a public commitment to protect it and noting that the right to raise issues in peaceful protests at the state's capital belongs to us all. All those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? I declare that carried. Now, we'll move on to councillor attendance at ALGA conferences. And that is Councillor Svensson. And is there a seconder? Councillor Irvin. Councillor Svensson.
The ALGA National Assembly is valuable. It builds skills, connects us with peers across Australia and gives Merri-bek a national voice. I hope we can agree that professional development is essential for good governance, so of course I support it. I went this year to the ALGA General Assembly and I got some great ideas from speakers, other councillors and the motions that were presented there. This motion isn't about restricting professional development, but it's about fairness and benefit to our community. Attendance is not free. Registration, flights, accommodation, they all add up. And when some councillors attend multiple times in a term or across terms, the cost goes quickly. In a cost of living crisis, our community expects us to use public funds carefully and to share opportunities evenly. A simple principle helps. One funded ALGA trip per councillor per term, with sensible exceptions, like if a councillor is the mayor, elected to the ALGA board, or otherwise holds a representative role that requires ongoing attendance, they should be able to go again. Otherwise, we rotate. That puts new voices in the room, spreads learning across the chamber, and otherwise keeps costs predictable. Importantly, tonight we're not rewriting the policy. We're just seeking a report that reviews our councillor support, expenses and resources policy and brings back options, costs and a clear pathway forward. That lets us weigh the benefits of professional development alongside fairness and fiscal responsibility. It ensures that every councillor has a chance to represent Merri-bek on the national stage. This is a balanced, practical step that protects professional development, shares opportunity and respects public money.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Councillor Irvin.
Yes, so Council currently has a policy on professional development which provides funding that we can spend over the 4-year term to undertake training and attend relevant events such as conferences. And we can choose to direct this funding to suit our own interests and development goals. We also, in this same policy, there's a recommendation that a maximum of 2 councillors should attend the same event for any interstate or overseas event. We can, of course, choose to send more councillors, though in my view, there'll be questions about the merits in not complying with this recommendation. If we were to comply with this recommendation, which I think would be a sensible use of ratepayer money, it would be fair to limit the number of times that a councillor can attend the ALGA National General Assembly to ensure that everyone who wants to attend is able to. So I support this motion calling for a report that reviews the policy as it relates to attendance at the ALGA National General Assembly. And I look forward to hearing back from officers the expected impacts of limiting paid councillor attendance to once per term with reasonable exemptions.
Thank you, Councillor Irvin. Councillor Abu.
Yeah, I'd raised to speak against this actually, which might surprise some people, mostly because what councillors get paid is about just under $50,000 for the year, 77 for a deputy. Yeah, well, yeah, and what yeah, all right, gross. Anyway, it's not a lot, and all of us are adults here, and we're all fairly well educated, and we've had experience out in the real world, and we decide according to our values what extra funding we want to take up. Some of us choose to do the AICD, some of us choose to go to conferences, some of us choose to go to ALGA. Each of us get different value from all of those things. And I just find this a little bit unnecessary. I think that if several councillors are going to the ALGA conference, that's kind of on them. And it's all recorded. And anybody who's keen to know, and people are keen to know, and they do tell us all about it, who goes, what is spent. If you don't feel comfortable spending extra money, don't spend the extra money. If you think you need to go because you get value out of it, go. Yeah, I'm not going to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Abu. Councillor Politis and then Councillor Yildiz.
Thank you, Mayor. I am speaking in opposition to this motion as well. I was initially quite surprised that there was an allocation of $10,000 per councillor for professional development. I must have missed that in the induction, but there is that allocation, and I think that, you know, there are some councillors who get a lot out of the ALGA conferences. I think that there are issues of national interest that some councillors probably like following, and that's their version of professional development. I also note that some of, you know, the late greats, including the first Mayor of Merri-bek, Mike Hill, fought very long and hard for people to be attending things like ALGA conferences because he saw great value in it. And I wouldn't want to restrict any councillor's desire to be attending if that's the way they choose to do professional development. Look, I looked at it and I thought, well, you know, who cares if they go 2 or 3 or 4 times, and what's the so what out of it? So I will be opposing this one.
Thank you, Councillor Politis. Councillor Yildiz.
Same. I think limiting...
I have a question of clarification.
Sorry, Councillor Pulford.
I have a question of clarification for
yes.
the relevant director.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so if a councillor's attendance at ALGA doesn't come out of their $10,000 professional development allocation for the term, does it?
So the question is, does the cost of ALGA come out of their professional development? It does not, I don't believe.
We can address that in the
Currently, what's the situation? Do we know? Oh, it does? We'll need to take that on notice, Councillor Pulford, and get back to you.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it doesn't, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, the advice I received when I went was that it doesn't.
Okay, let's move back to the debate. Councillor Yildiz, please go ahead.
Can I just echo what Councillor Abood was saying and what Councillor Politis said? I think limiting attendance creates an unfair hierarchy between councillors. To say you can go but you can't go, I don't think that's the right thing to be doing, especially when some of us are attending conferences worth $9,490. That's the GAICD course. The more we send, I think, the stronger our presence is. I mean, we went this year, and forget about all the exposure in terms of understanding the wide range of issues from infrastructure, housing, environment, health, diversity, economic development. I got more out of one 3-hour thing than I did for the whole 3 days, but also engaging with other councillors from my own council and understanding them, in particular you, Ella. I really enjoyed the opportunity to actually get to understand you and build a bit more of a relationship with you. But we can contribute more to debate, support motions, ensure our voice is heard. And I think saying you can go but you can't go, I don't think it's the right thing to do. And I think it's investing in the future. I mean, people elected us to represent them, and if it means that we go to these conferences, they're not junkets. It's an opportunity for us to build knowledge, skills, relationships, networks, and even some of the discussions I had with a number of the stakeholders and the stalls that were in the main hall, the things that I was able to see that we're not doing here, some of the offerings by a number of organisations that are, for example, providing great service to councils in Queensland that we haven't even considered. Some of the initiatives that are being developed in Merri-bek, my old town in South Australia, I could not believe that we haven't even, in terms of sustainability and garbage recycling, I couldn't believe a town like Merri-bek is doing better than us. So I don't think there's anything wrong with sending people, and here we are saying, well, you can go, you can't go, this is the amount. As Councillor Abood said, a gross income of $50,000, there are people in workplaces now that are earning 3 times that and going to conferences and doing professional development because it is mandated that you need to do PD. I think ALGA's probably, for example, with me, it's probably the key highlight for me. I gain more from ALGA than I do from any other conference. I don't go to MAV anymore. I don't go to VLGA anymore. I think this is a conference where you've got 950 councillors from all over Australia. You've got CEOs who you're able to engage with. You've got even senior staff that you have a discussion about what they're doing different to us. You learn. I mean, I think indirectly or directly, I'd recommend every councillor on this council to go. And you know what? If they wanted to go every year, I'd be supporting whoever it is. I couldn't care who it is around this table. If you want to go, you go. Simple as that.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Miles.
Just clarification, this is just a report, isn't it? Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Pulford, do you wish to speak to this item? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I'm a little bit surprised at some of the arguments I'm hearing this evening. Earlier this term, we had a councillor say that we shouldn't send a representative to the Friends of LAU conference in Timor-Leste, and that if a councillor wanted to go, they could just pay it themselves. And then tonight we're having people saying that actually the same person's arguing that councillor allowance is not much actually, and people can't afford to pay things themselves. So this is just asking for a report. I think it's a responsible thing to do. We have had a number of councillors express this term already concern about spending on other councillors' professional development. There was a whole debate, I think, at our last meeting about whether a councillor could choose what professional development they wanted. And then tonight we're hearing from councillors that, of course, councillors should be able to choose their own professional development. So there's a bit of inconsistency here across the different issues. But for me, this is just asking for a report. It is allowing everybody to attend ALGA once in the term, so there's equal opportunity there. It would have exceptions for people like the Mayor or ALGA delegates to be able to attend if needed. I think, you know, if we are going to be doing prudent decision making, the least we can do is approve this report so we can actually consider the issues properly. I think also it's relevant to whether this money comes out of a councillor's professional development funding or not. This report could potentially look into that. I think it would make sense for me that rather than having ALGA participation and costs separate to that 10 grand, it should be included in that 10 grand, which is a limit that's kind of been put forward through our governance procedures. So yeah, it's just asking for a report, and yeah, a bit surprised at the debate that I've been listening to this evening.
Okay, sorry to interrupt the debate. We need another extension of time. Moved by Councillor Aboud, seconded by Councillor Svensson. All those in favour? I declare that carried.
Can I ask another question? Well, actually, Councillor Pulford's question again. It does make a difference to me whether the cost of ALGA is included in the money that is allocated.
I don't know if we have that information right now to provide to you. So, sorry, what was the question?
The last expense report I saw included ALGA
reiterating
costs.
Councillor Pulford's question.
So, through you, Mayor, we can't find any provision in the policy tonight that says that it's not part of that $10,000 over 4 years. The AICD course is excluded from the $10,000 over 4 years. We can't find any reference that the ALGA conference is, but we can look into that. Also, can I just take the opportunity to remind councillors we have a lot of items left on the agenda, and the meeting either has to finish at 10:30 if we're going into tomorrow night, or 10:40 if it can be finished today.
With that in mind, can I propose that we defer this so that we can tidy it up a little bit?
Yep, that's fine. So that's a procedural motion. I gather there's general support for that, and there's no urgency to this. We'll move on then and defer that until the next council meeting in August. Do we need to vote on the deferral? Yes, so we will vote on the deferral. Moved by Councillor Aboud, seconded by Councillor Svensson. All those in favour? I declare that carried to defer this item.
I'm against the deferral.
What did he say? Against, for the film. Okay, no problem. Okay. All right, no problem. Let's move on, everyone. So we will move on to 8.9, urgent action required on road safety, recent fatal incidents on Moreland Road. Moved by Councillor Iwasaki, seconded by Councillor Aboud.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I will be quick. First, I want to recognize that this is second unnecessary death on Moreland Road, the border of my ward. This time of a cyclist, before that as of a skateboarder. Both were unnecessary, and both were caused by motorists. So this motion just acknowledges the urgent need for a safer road environment along Moreland Road and writes to the Minister for Transport and coordinates on that request. When I ride my bike on this road, I feel particularly unsafe, and it's justifiably so. So, yeah, looking forward to the forum this weekend as well.
Yes.
On the 13th, sorry. Yeah.
On Saturday.
Yeah, cool.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Councillor Iwasaki. Councillor Aboud.
Just to commend this motion, it borders so many wards. It's quite important. Well done.
Thank you. If there's no further speakers, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Now, we don't have any notices of rescission. Councillors, are there any foreshadowed items to move we would like to bring to the attention of the chamber? No, if there are none, we will close the meeting to the public to move into confidential. Councillors, can I have a motion to close the meeting? Councillor Aboud, seconded by Councillor Irvin. All those in favour? I declare that carried. We'll just wait for the cameras to turn up.